Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to my live medieval sewing party. I am the creative Contessa. Some of you know me as Rachel. Guess I don't need that because I'm not filming, I'm live streaming, and we've had such issues with sound devices that I'm not going to use a microphone. Yeah, so welcome everyone. I am excited. Uh, I've got a bunch of things that I need to repair and or actually finish properly that I never finished. So we're going to be able to take a tour through some of my clothing, and I'll be able to discuss with you live the things I did incorrectly that I would do differently this time with the knowledge that I now have about medieval tailoring techniques versus the knowledge I had when I made the garments. So yeah. Happy Easter. Yeah, that's right. I kind of live in a, oh dear, what's happened here? I live in a twilight zone where time and space no longer seem to matter, so I've forgotten entirely that it is Easter weekend. I did not attend any of the trivium masses. I did not attend Good Friday. I barely realized today is Saturday, and it's only because I have a live stream scheduled. So yeah, hopefully enough people are back from mass that we can enjoy this session together. Greetings. Yeah, hello Tommaso. Lori, it's lovely to see you. You know, I once actually, a professor from Brown University actually once hired my consulting services for a novel he was working on because he wanted to understand Easter celebrations in Florence in the 15th century, and specifically how dance would have played a part in that. And so we had a really nice session about that, actually. And unfortunately, a lot of people think that Easter is uh, they think of it as being a celebration, right? Like they think of Christmas, they think of Carnivale. And I have to remind people that Easter is actually a time of extreme solemnity in the Christian church. And the celebration part only kind of really comes on Sunday with the resurrection. And so, it was not a time for feasting and frivolity. It was it's one of the few Christian holidays that the Christians in the Middle Ages somehow managed not to corrupt, for the most part, at least not in Florence. So yeah, yeah. So apparently, Nabi, my little rescue tiger stripe, has decided it's cuddle on lap time. She's been walking around meowing at me while I've been getting set up. So yeah. Good morning, everyone. Today, specifically, I'm going to be working on, oh, well, I guess that scared the crap out of her. She apparently doesn't like silk taffeta. So the first thing we're going to actually work on are a bunch of little repairs that I need to make on this, what the modern person calls a Burgundian style gown. You've seen it in a lot of my recent videos for certain, and I've got a whole getting dressed series on putting this entire ensemble on. But, I've made this, what year is it? 2025. I made this 12 years ago, and it has been through the ringer. And so there's a lot of areas where it needs it's actually holding up really well, but stitches have come undone. So we're going to be reattaching the lining to the sleeve here in the arm's eye. But there's also some spots where wear and pull have happened. And I mean that literally, not tear, but pull, because you can see spots where the fabric has sort of pulled. Literally, it's come loose, and it's pulled against the stitches. And so I'm going to go and put in some reinforcing tacking stitches that's actually going to anchor the shell fabric, that's silk taffeta, to the lining, which is another kind of more plain weave silk. And that will give the shell fabric some extra resilience, and that it will stop pulling out this way. But it also kind of shows some fitting issues where I need to adjust the arms on. And that's going to come up in Burgundian gown 3.4.0, 5.0. I don't know which version I'm on at this point. I've been playing with the Burgundian gown patterns for 24, 25 years at this point. As I've learned more about the extant garments of the time. And you can see some examples where I've already done this around the waist, where the fabric had literally just pulled out and shredded. I just put in some tacking stitches. The modern sewist might call this stitching the ditch. And I stitched on both sides of the ditch, actually, in this case, the ditch being the seam. And you can see what that looks like on the inside. It practically vanishes on the inside. Yeah. So we're going to be doing a bunch of repairs like that. And here in the other arm's eye, this is the right sleeve, the gore that's in the bottom of the arm's eye. You can see where it's really pulled quite extensively. That's because I'm a very dynamic person, and I probably wear my clothes more dynamically than a 15th century noblewoman would have. I mean, I'm not saying they sat still, but I'm just saying that I'm really dynamic. It's not a slur on medieval women. It's a poke at myself and my own high levels of energy. So the format is, everyone, of course, if you have a question, pop it in the comments and I will happily answer. And of course, please hit that thumbs up if you're enjoying this. So I'm going to be doing some stitching the ditch around here. And I think I'm not going to try to reincorporate that pull into that. I'm going to actually just let it be, and I'm just going to stitch it down. And I might go and find, I have scraps. I always save my scraps from every project in a bag that's labeled by the project from which the scraps came, so that I have scraps for things like patches and repairs. So I'll go and figure out where my pouches, my baggies of scraps are, and pull out some of this remnant of this silk, and just maybe put a patch over top of it. But for now, I'm definitely going to go ahead and reinforce that with some tacking stitches, some stab stitches on either side, just to give that a little more resilience. And I can see I already did that once, and clearly I need to do it again. And I might actually do some embroidery stitches here to really kind of catch all these loose ends, maybe some split stitches, or maybe even a chain stitch, which I haven't done in forever, something like that, to kind of catch that. And it's under my armpit, so unless I literally go like this, no one sees it. But I do go like this actually a lot while dancing, so there is that. Yeah. So we'll go ahead and get started with that. And then as we get through the pile of other garments I have here with various repairs, then we'll talk about those as we get to them. So what is everyone else working on this morning? I actually am also plotting a new Curdle. Susan mentions beautiful Burgundian fabric for a Curdle. The Curdle is this. The blue thing that I'm wearing is a Curdle. This is a simple wool Curdle. But if you read through the expense accounts of noble women from this era, their Curdles they did have wool Curdles for certain, but they also had Curdles made out of splendid fabrics like silk damask, silk satin, silk taffeta, um, cloth of gold even. And if you look in medieval manuscripts, illuminations, and miniatures from the 15th century, and you see ladies sometimes wearing like this cloth of gold Curdle. So apparently that isn't just an artist's fancy. Apparently, very well-heeled women did in fact have cloth of gold Curdles. So that's on my list, is to make, okay, maybe not cloth of gold, because I can't actually afford cloth of gold, not real cloth of gold anyway, but maybe on, not not sewing thread, but a thread from my recently starched silk veils. Anyway, yeah, I will definitely, I do have silk damask in my fabric stores that I will absolutely be turning into a more splendid sort of Curdle. And I will do a project vlog on that, because people have been asking me for a while if I could do a tutorial or a project vlog on making a Curdle. The answer is yes, because I also need some more Curdles, so it kind of works out. And kind of hoping to get that done by Penzic, which is at the end of July, first week in August timeframe. So we'll see if that happens. Just gonna bring that a little bit better. Sorry, there's always a little bit of adjusting, figuring out where cameras need to be and all that. No, I don't want to use this fine white silk thread for that. This is actually Korean silk embroidery silk thread, so it's really, really fine, which makes it great for sewing. But also I don't need that for this. Instead, I'm going to use, this is dead stock, or actually old German silk thread that I got from a batch of silk thread from eBay when I was still living in Germany, that I bought. I got this batch of just spools in various states of use, all sorts of colors, like hundreds of spools literally in one batch, and I got it for like 20 euros, where one spool of Gutermann silk thread now would cost you $5. So yeah, Pro tip, you can still find deals like that even on American eBay. If you do a search for silk thread, used silk thread, and then if you like refine the search to lots or something like that, or dead stock even, you can still find there. Same thing is happening still. There's elderly people who were sewists or craftspeople who had quality crafting materials are dying, and their heirs don't want these crafting supplies, so they sell them for actually way too cheaply on venues like eBay. Sometimes they end up at Goodwill and other thrift stores too, but just as often they end up on eBay. So I know I had my wax. I had my wax out earlier, and then it was in the shot I was filming. I've also been working on my new silk, my new Burgundian veil, the one with the frontlet that we did the starching experiment for. And I was filming that before this, and I thought that my little lump of sewing wax wasn't very scenic in the background of the picture, so I tossed it in the sewing box haphazardly. Yeah. So this is okay. So language. First off, let me back up and say Laurie is working on a second kamicha. That's awesome. You can never have too many kamiche, especially if you do any kind of long-term living history events. More than 2 days, and you definitely need more than one kamicha. Language. I forgot what a Burgundian overgown is called. So what we call the Burgundian overgown was in the 15th century just called a gown in English. And that applies to the overgarment for both men and women. There is no distinction made anywhere. They'll say it's a gown for a woman or it's a gown for a man, and then they'll describe its properties if it's an order, and they'll say what materials it's going to be made out of, but they almost never say anything about the cut. So any overgown in the 15th century in English is called a gown. The thing that goes under it, this is called a kirtle. And then the thing that goes under that is called a smock or a smoka, a smock or a shirt. Sometimes in the later 15th century, you start seeing the word shirt that applies to this kind of thing. But they don't have a special word for, and they don't even say in the Burgundian style, because it was just the style that everyone knew it was. There's no need. It wasn't foreign enough to get that kind of descriptor in the English sources, and neither in the French. In the French, this overgown is called a robe, R-O-B-E. This is called a cotte, C-O-T-T-E, or a cotte, depending on which part of France you're from and whether those final letters actually still are getting pronounced in the 15th century. For the most part, they are. And then this is called a chemise, right? So chemise does not mean a specific cut of linen undergarment. It just means a linen undergarment that goes against your skin. Men and women wore them, not just a female garment. So there you go. Your brief clothing sartorial language lesson with sewing and other features of my medieval sewing parties. Yeah. Courtney, hello, lovely Contessa. I'm working on a Roman tunica and peplos for a Roman SCA event. Very cool. Very nice. Courtney, what fabrics are you going with for that? A lot of people don't realize that Roman and Greek clothing was mostly made out of wool. They didn't often make things out of linen. And a lot of modern people can't imagine making those garments out of wool. I mean, like there would be an undergarment out of linen, but the overgarments were made generally out of wool. Even on those ancient Greek statues you see with the flowing chitons, wool. And people say, but it's so hot there. And I'm like, well, wool, if it's woven properly, breathes really well in humid and hot conditions. Obviously, you're not going to wear something made out of boiled wool in those climates, but wool breathes really well. And in point of fact, if you were to make weave linen as thickly as boiled wool, it wouldn't breathe very well either. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and anchor my thread under here in the seam allowance. And there I find a random, not a knot, just a clump of beeswax. And then I'm going to put a knot in. Seat it. Notoriously hard on my garments, but This will at least extend the shelf life of this gown. Okay, here we go. So I'm just going to actually do, and you can see I did it once. There are little stab stitches here. And I'm going to do it again. So I'm just going to go back over, and this time I'm not going to tuck it back in like I did before and try to force it to be that size. I'm just going to embrace the amount that has pulled out as the amount that by which I should expand the gores in my arm's eye for this style of gown. And I'm just going to go through and put in little stab stitches here. In fact, you may or may not have ever noticed, but the arm's eyes on this blue Curdle are not really super great. It actually pulls off of my shoulder, and that's a problem with the arm's eye itself. This is probably the sleeve cap, actually. And so I'm actually going to do one of these live streams. I'm going to show you how I fix that. And it's going to involve a lot of irregular geometry and insertion of random pieces of fabric. But I think one of these upcoming live streams is going to be fixing how the arm's eye clinic, how to fix the arm's eyes to make them actually fit your shoulders. So I have very muscular shoulders because I'm athletic and apparently of good peasant stock from probably the Czech Republic, Hungary, Ireland, and Germany and Italy. Like I've got peasant stock all over my family tree. And so we women in my family, we build muscle real easily. And so my shoulders are a little more three-dimensional than a lot of medieval women, probably a lot of medieval noble women had in any case. And so what this has proven me over the years is that I kind of need special shapes, not necessarily to the arm's eye, but to the sleeve cap. And that usually involves inserting some very strangely shaped pieces, which when I started doing that, made some of the extant garments we have with their weird sleeve caps just make so much more sense. It's like, oh yeah, everyone's shoulders are a little weird and no one a perfectly, even cosine curve is not really gonna account for musculature if you want to be able to move in the garment that you're wearing. So if you can hear that noise, my cats have Nabi is hunting her little feather stick thing that she loves so much. So I apologize, but the kitties have decided that now is playtime. They were dead asleep before this live stream started, by the way. uh let's see. Courtney says, as a newbie, I'm just starting out in cotton. Hey, no problem. No criticism from me, by the way. That was just information for the general general public. I mean, absolutely. I started out with polyester because I really didn't know any better. And I'm not talking about authenticity. I mean the evils of polyester. And then I was just sweating horribly in my medieval clothes. I mean, like, oh my God, miserable. Thankfully, I figured that out pretty quickly before putting too much more time and effort into unbreathable polyester. But yeah, cotton is a really good choice for a beginner. Cotton is easy to work with. It's, I'm sorry, that's my cat dragging her feather stick toy all over the place like it's her favorite pet. Anyway, cotton is really good. It's inexpensive. You can find cotton, sources to upcycle or recycle. So no criticism for me. Yeah. The event is in 1 week and I'll be hand sewing. I will have a nice silk cerise, my pala though. Oh, beautiful. Yeah, silk cerise really do make excellent palas. For those who don't know what a pala is, that's the drapey thing that women wear that goes from one shoulder kind of around to the other and it just sort of crosses in front of their body and just hangs there really alluringly. That's the pala. Yeah. And saris really do make a really nice pala for that. Absolutely. I'm excited to see more of the repair aspect. These skills are so useful in everyday life. They really are. I think we, especially creators, me among them, and I'm not criticizing my fellow creators because I am also like this. We get really excited about the new project, the next shiny thing, where we really get to, be artists. But the reality is that a lot of these repairs need to be super creative often because things don't always tear, or when things tear, if they tear, they never tear regularly. If it's not the seam that tears, then you've got to get super creative. So, yeah, repairs are really important. And a lot of people no longer have repair skills. Like they wouldn't know how to properly reattach a button, they wouldn't know how to fix a basic seam. So, I actually teach classes like that professionally. Like, I do these sip and stitch classes that I teach. And it's like the paint and wine format, but with sewing and wine and tea and cheese. And so I call them sip and stitch. And so I do actually do a sip and stitch that is a repair sip and stitch where I teach people how to do like three of the basic repairs, like seam rip seam rip hem fallen hem, and reattaching a button, and accompanied by, nice wine and cheese. And I'm quite a cheese connoisseuse, so, fine cheese in my case. And then they walk away with having had fun and with a pretty useful skill set. So I noticed as I was working here that this seam had actually started to detach here. So I'm just going ahead and putting in some reinforcing stitches here. These are just stab stitches, nothing fancy. KT Rainbow, LOL, real Calmaker women stock. Yep, that is me, 100%. Harvest, bringing in the harvest, dragging livestock all over the place against their will, plowing the fields. Yep, that's me. Let's see. Oh, KT Rainbow, thank you. You're so generous. I really appreciate that. Question: when you are mending, do you not thread every 5 or 10 stitches? Yes. So that's a great question, Susan. Thank you. Thank you, Capriola, for asking the perfect question. Yeah. So when I'm doing any kind of hand stitching, I do toss either a back stitch or a little, not a big one, just a little one in every 10 stitches or so, so that if a stitch breaks, and they will eventually, thread will wear away, something will cause the stitches to break, then the whole line of stitching doesn't come undone, just that one little area. It only unravels to the spot where there's a knot, right? So that's a really great tip. Thank you for reminding me to say that, Susan. Appreciate it. Let me see. KT Rainbow, trying to sew your first clothing project now. Nice. What is it? Did you already say what you're working on? Did I miss it? I'm sorry. KT Rainbow, I apologize if I missed you saying what it is you're working on, but could you just let me know again, since I seem to have missed it entirely? Oh no, my needle's gone. Good evening, Zigmas. Where are you in the world? I am actually in Korea near Seoul. Oh, there it is. Yay. I am not near Seoul. Sorry. I'm not near Seoul, actually. I'm in Daegu. Even though people think the entire country of Korea is just Seoul, it is not. Um, Let me see. Pajamas for my kids. Oh, good choice. Good choice, Katie. It's a good, why sewing for children, especially small children, is a good way to, um, what do we say? Cut your chops. What is that expression in English? Get your chops. Whatever. A way to learn how to do things. Is because small children are small and it goes quickly. And if you make mistakes, it's no real big deal because they're not going to be that size for long enough to wear it so that your mistake actually matters. I had a friend who preferred to make clothes for her children than for grown-ups because it was so fast that she could get results instantly and see the completed project without having to wait a really long time to finally reach the finished thing. So yeah, sewing clothes for children is a really great way to learn how to sew. It really is. Hey, pajamas might not be exciting, but you know what? They are practical and they provide you with all the basic skills you need to be able to move on to the frustrating things. By the way, on the subject of frustrating things to sew, rectangles, and I mean just a simple rectangle is the most frustrating thing to sew if you actually want everything to be perfectly rectilinear with perfect right angles. I'm about to put a short out about this. I hate rectangles so much. And why is it that I'm complaining about rectangles? Because the frontlet, this part, the part framing my face, call that a frontlet. is a perfect rectangle, and I'm going to have one on my new silk veil for my miters, my what you might call a hennin, a not a hennin. And I'm working on making that frontlet as perfectly rectilinear as possible, and it is fighting me so much. Not as much as the silk velvet hood that I wore frontlet that I made. That mm, I've never resewn a straight line of stitching so many times. So yeah, honestly, curves are I've discovered easier to sew and make nice than perfectly straight right angle lines are. Oh, nice, Sigmund from the Middle Kingdom. Well, welcome. I am technically in the Kingdom of the West, in the Barony Palatine of the Far West, for those of you who are participants in the Society for Creative Anachronism. Yeah, yeah, KT. So KT says, making things for children, as I commented, they grow quickly, so it doesn't matter if it's perfect. Yeah, it should definitely make you a lot less stressed about making something for children because unless you've cut it so small that it won't fit on their bodies no matter what, there's no real way to ruin it. I mean, they're children. Okay, so there is that repair. That is looking much better and much more secure. I might go back and maybe not. I'm probably going to have to go and do a patch here eventually because the fabric will just wear away. My wear spots on my clothing, by the way, are here. This is I call this the wear zone on me. This is like literally the fabric just wears away. And it's happened on my red Curdle. I didn't bring it, so I can't show it to you. It all of my gamore, they all wear away here. And I patch them until they can't be patched anymore. But these are my wear zones right here, and also here in the shoulder area are wear zones. But in fairness, the underarm and the shoulders are wear zones in historical Korean clothing as well, because that's where they either put extra fabric or they've patched them. So the extant medieval garments we have from Korea all have extra pieces here in the shoulder for that wear point, and extra panels here and here on the sides and in the armpit. And they nearly all of them, if they were actually worn, the ones that were actually worn and that weren't just votive, they all have patches. So yeah, I feel like I'm just being super authentic in wearing my garments out that way, which means I'm wearing them correctly. Yeah. You all know I'm teasing, right? My crazy little tiger stripe baby is just doing some really athletic things over there. Oh my goodness. Okay. Um, Swift walker, speed walking. Yeah, yeah. I actually have some videos. If you look up Korean clothing or hanbok on my channel, I have some videos on Korean clothing and on extant Korean clothing because we have a museum here that has a nice collection actually here in town in Daegu. And so I actually, did some short videos on that if you want to go check those out. There was also they actually using historical techniques wove a Korean cloth of reproduced a 16th century Korean cloth of gold from a royal tomb, excuse me, a noblewoman's tomb, and they actually showed there was a video of that process, and I I filmed the video of that process to share with you all. So that's also somewhere in my channel under Hanbok. So you can see the reproduction process of making real, honest to God cloth of gold from hammering out the metal into sheets using a razor blade to slice it into super thin strips to be woven into the fabric, all the way up to the final product and the reproduced joggery that they were using for which they were making it. So yeah, I just love being able to look at dead people's clothing. There's so many things you learn. Okay, so the next repair I'm going to do, this is so I made this gown, as some of you heard me say, 12 years ago. 12 years ago. And I made it with bag lining because I didn't know yet that that wasn't an authentic approach. Lots of problems with bag lining. Not going to get into those. I have a video that talks about that if you look about my sewing mistakes videos. Anyway, the lining is whip stitched into the lining of the body is whip stitched into the lining of the sleeves, and that of course is wearing away where else but in my armpit. So I'm just going to go ahead and touch up those whip stitches to reattach that. Speaking of where I wear my clothes down, I really want to try the experience of the olden days, but I don't know what the name is to search for. Can you help me? Yeah. So, Joe Rogers, look up the society. Where are you? Actually, Joe Rogers. So, the continent you are on matters in my answer a little bit, but for most continents, you can most inhabited continents and sometimes even Antarctica. The Society for Creative Anachronism is a good place to get a start. And it's good because it's a low starting bar. You'll get a lot of support. You're not expected to have a perfect kit from the very get-go, and there'll be a lot of people very willing to share their knowledge with you freely and openly. And you can explore a variety of medieval periods and places in the Society for Creative Anachronism. So that would be also known as the SCA. That would be there. They have a presence on all the social media, on Discord. Although Discord's a little harder because I don't know if you can just look them up. I'm not certain. I always work with invitations on Discord, so I don't know if you can just go find them. But they're on Facebook. They're on the web, Instagram, all the places. Society for Creative Anachronism. Um, yeah. So and depending on where you are, there is a big 2 week medievalist event called Penzic in Western Pennsylvania, and I go there and live 15th century style ish for 2 weeks. I say ish because it isn't. I don't have my full. Ironically, I don't have my full living history gear. A lot of it's still in storage at Penzic. So I have a slimmed down 15th century encampment, and I dine with my Lord Master Papa, as I call him. And so, their camp does not cook medieval things and does not cook them the medieval way. So that's why I say I live 15th century ish for 2 weeks. Yeah. Let me see. What century and region is your clothing? Okay, so what you are seeing here, ladies and gentlemen, is 15th century Franco-Burgundian. So this style of Curdle kind of spans like the 1410s to the 1480s. You see this, 1470s, you see this. This particular coif, I call it a winged coif. They just called them coifs or kerchiefs in the 15th century. Um, is kind of it's a more middle class model, but we have images of very noble women wearing them in the privacy of their quarters. And I'm considering that I've invited you into my private chambers for a sewing party. So I'm dressed down, as it were, dressed casually, shall we say. Very cool. Glowed clothing. Is this how silver cloth was made for the wealthy in New York? So the silver by the time I don't know about the Astor's clothing. I don't know if it was hand woven or not, because if it's hand woven, it probably machine woven, it was probably a different technique. On the other hand, if anyone in the 19th century can afford hand woven cloth of silver fabric, it's the Astors. So I couldn't tell you if it's the same technique because I don't actually know anything about cloth of gold or cloth of silver in the 19th century. Freely admitting, freely admitting my ignorance there. Ah, the UK. Okay, SCA. S is in snake, C is in cat, A is in apple. Joe Rogers. The SCA is also in the UK. There are other more focused reenactment and living history groups there if you have a specific period that interests you. Um, in the UK, it's all going to be UK based, so you're not going to have Burgundian groups or Italian groups. If you want to do if you want to explore medieval Germany, Italy, France, etc., and you're living in the UK, then the SCA is your game because they cover all of Europe, not just the United Kingdom. But if you have a specific period that interests you, there are in the UK reenactment and living history groups that focus very specifically on a time and place. But I don't know who they are, so I couldn't help you there. But they also generally have really strict standards, and they're not necessarily as helpful in helping new people get their kits set up. So SCA is a good place for beginners to start, for certain. Very welcoming. Um, Calosseur did a cloth of silver with turquoise around 1907. Yeah, and so a lot of that haute couture stuff tends to be hand woven or handmade, even still in the 19th and 20th century. So it's possibly that it was. I really want to experience it for my big 40th. Um, well, so there's if you depends on how you so you Joe, do you want to experience it like me, like wear the clothes, go and do the things, like be a medieval person, or did you want to watch other people being medieval? Because there's different venues for that, shall we say. Yeah. But the SCA group in the UK has events at castles and whatnot, so they're pretty fun events to attend. They're pretty nice. They've got a lot of atmosphere. Okay, so you can see I have whip stitched that back into place, lickety split. So I'm going to go ahead and just put one last little anchoring knot in at the end there, and then move on to the next area and bury, of course, as always, bury my needle and thread in the layers between, so between the lining and the shell, pull it out and snip. And then let's look for our, oh, I guess could have just kept going. Somehow I missed that. There was an entire other section. Okay, well, that's what I get for talking and doing at the same time. More thread. Is the sealed knot still around in England? I actually don't know what the sealed knot is. Oh, you're probably not talking to me, are you? Are you Susan? Nightmare Dragon. Welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening, morning, afternoon, whatever hemisphere you happen to be occupying. And as always, everyone, if you're enjoying this, don't forget to hit that thumbs up. Okay, more thread. Now, when I am doing seams and wear and tear areas, joints, I always double my thread. There is some evidence in extant garments for doubled thread as well for seams. So not always, but often and sometimes. So just sort of like some people do their seams and hems in single thread. Now, some people did that in pre-modern times and some people doubled it up. I prefer to double it up because things last longer if it's doubled up. And, and I do have other things I need to do with my time than just constantly repair my clothes. I'd like to actually make some new things too. So, less time spent repairing means more time making new things. Oh, thank you, Joe. I really appreciate that. Thank you for subscribing and thumbs upping and all that stuff. Appreciate it. Yeah, I hope you find useful and fun, entertaining stuff on my channel. And I always respond to comments. So if as you're watching through things, you have questions, if you pop them in the comments, I will absolutely answer. Always. The only time I won't is if I don't get notification that something has been commented. That is, unfortunately, YouTube is sometimes a little tricky about that. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and anchor my thread again. And because it's doubled, the thread is doubled in this case, I'm going to actually run it through the knot like that to create that first little anchor. Yeah, so amazing. You made all your own clothes, hats, and shoes. Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty crazy. I keep thinking, gosh, I just haven't really been making very much. And then I actually stop and think about all the things I actually have, in fact, been making. So I haven't been making lots of like new gowns, but I've been making lots of accessories and, focusing on some of the more nitty-gritty details instead of the big flashy details. And I've been finishing things and I have to remind myself that I'm hand sewing everything. So what that means is that it takes more time. And so I'm not going to have the output that I had 20 years ago before I started hand sewing everything. Although I might have to compromise on my hand sewing everything in order to get some new things done in time for Penzik, because literally some of my gowns are disintegrating. I don't mean the seams, I mean the fabric is just completely worn away. And so I really do need new things because 2 weeks living 15th century, you need enough clothes to get through that. So I might have to actually hand sew or machine sew the inside seams. But in fairness, I have an antique treadle sewing machine that I use for that. So at least it will be a foot powered machine, not an electrically powered machine. Right? That's sort of medieval-ish. It isn't, not at all. I'm absolutely joking. Oh, thank you, Joe. That's so kind of you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, so Joe, you have you let me see. Do you have a period or a place that really interests you? Like the olden days, like when I was little, I definitely loved playing the olden days, and that is exactly what I called it. But is there a like a portrait that really attracts you, like you've seen in an art museum or a tapestry or something like that, or maybe a TV show where you saw someone and you're like, I really want to wear those clothes. Might be able to guide you a little bit more with some more input like that. Will the Notahenen have a memorial, or were you able to resurrect it? So I haven't. For those who don't know, my Notahenen had a tragic accident on the journey back from the U.S. to Korea, courtesy of me not packing my bag properly, because I was really distracted due to the uh, the reason that I was in Chicago or near Chicago at the time. Anyway, I ended up packing my heavy wooden medieval jewelry box, the big round collar box that some of you have seen, on above the Notahenen, and the when the suitcase was sitting up, the collar box just squished down into the Notahenen and basically pancaked it. So it's no longer round, it's kind of oblong, my Notahenen. Which yeah, so I'm going to try to resurrect it. I've been thinking about that. Whether I should remove the fabric, the covering fabric, and steam it that way, try to actually steam it and then reshape it and let it cool around something that's round, and we'll let it reshape. Because the frame of for my Not a Hennin, for those who don't know, is vellum, real goatskin vellum. So it will actually steam and reset, and it will dry. It will not be ruined. So I know this in theory. I haven't done it in practice, so I think I'm going to do that. The only question I have is whether I'm going to bother removing the fabric or not. And because the fabric is wool and linen, I don't think it's nothing bad is going to happen to it if it gets wet. So I think I'm just going to leave it on and see what happens if I reshape it that way rather than taking it apart and reshaping it. Because every time I go to take it apart and refashion it in some way, saying, well, this will give me the impetus I need to make that new one I've been wanting to make for years. I never get around to making the new one before the next event comes around. So I've learned my lesson. Don't even try to coerce myself or extort myself, blackmail myself into being more productive. It doesn't work. Present me nearly always resents past me. There's only a few occasions where I'm grateful to past me. Oh, let me see. Do you feel like the treadle machine gives you more control with your sewing? Yes. Yes, yes, yes. I love my treadle sewing machine. Hate, hate power machines, because I hadn't used a powered machine in like 2 decades when I borrowed one, 15 years anyway, when I borrowed one during the pandemic because my treadle machine was in storage, or I hadn't received it yet. And I was like, oh my God, this is like driving a Lamborghini with no brakes. Yeah, the treadle machine just gives you so much more control, and you get a little exercise while you're going because your foot is constantly moving up and down. I've actually sewn two 15th century round pavilions, big ones, on my treadle sewing machine, and I sewed through my finger twice. Yeah. Um, and the way I got my treadle machine is pretty awesome. If it weren't covered in stuff, I would show it to you, but it's covered in stuff. And by stuff, I mean like there's a computer sitting on it. Anyway, my treadle sewing machine has a fun origin story. So when I was living in Germany, we moved from our little half timber 17th century half timber place to a much more spacious, much more modern apartment at the end of the S1 line in the Frankfurt area. And we took a bunch of stuff to the dump. You have to pay for that in Germany, which makes people a lot less wasteful. Funny that. Anyway, and there was this treadle sewing machine in its cabinet sitting there, and it was like it had just been delivered that day. It was freshly oiled, it had all its parts, it was still fully operational. I mean, it was pristine condition. And the dump gave us a €7 discount to take it off of his hands. So not only did I not have to pay for it, we got money to take it. And then I used it to make two 15th century pavilions and a whole bunch of other garb. So yeah, Treadle sewing machine for the win, and you can still get them really inexpensively. Treadle sewing machines at antique stores or the flea market antique stores, those kinds of places. Fantastic. Gives you so much more control. And really, especially for historical sewing, all you need is a straight stitch. You don't need any of the other stitches. You really don't. You just don't. So now if you're doing, more modern stuff, then maybe you want to have your 300 programmable stitches. I don't. I just want a front stitch and a reverse stitch, and I want to have all metal parts that I can easily repair if something breaks instead of a computer that needs reprogramming. But that's just me. I don't do medieval living history because I love modern technology. Let me see. I would cheat, but hand sew the small things and mending, but machine sew all of the clothes. Yeah. So the rule I used to have was for myself, not for anyone else, myself, is that I would machine sew the interior long seams, and then anything that was visible I would hand sew. And then eventually I was like, yeah, but it still doesn't feel right to me. And I want to know that the thing I'm wearing is hand sewn. And obviously no one else will know that except for me. But it became important to me. And so that's when I started hand sewing everything. But then my production rate ground to like an almost standstill because long seams to do them nicely can take a really long time, especially when you've got, seam, 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 right? This has like a 8-foot train and it's got, I don't know, it probably has 30 feet of inside seams easily. So long seams just on the inside. So that takes a while. Yeah. Okay. So we're now just so that everyone is tracking on where we are in this. This is the front of the gown, right? This is the part, the V opening here, right? Here. And so at the bottom is the where the two sides meet. And that has the stitches have started coming out there just on the shell, a little bit on the lining. So you can see the stitches have started coming loose there. And remember, everyone, when you are sewing, you always want your seams to be weaker than the fabric because if push comes to shove or pull comes to tug, and force is exerted on your fabric, if your seam is too strong, then the fabric will rip. And then you get into the very complex territory of redarning together, reweaving together, patching, trying to somehow get it back together. Whereas if the seam rips, all you have to do is fix the seam. Lickety split, easy peasy. So as you can see, I succeeded because at some point pressure was exerted here and the stitches on the seam popped, stitches on the seam popped, not on the the fabric didn't tear. Yay, victory. So I'm just going to go ahead and redo those stitches. And again, keeping in mind, I don't want them to be too tight. Yep. Joe says, no, not a particular period or place or person. I just want to do something very different and special for my birthday because I love to hear olden day stories of how people lived back in the day. Well, cool. Um, yeah. So just for your birthday, or do you want to do it beyond that because it's a lot of investment of time, resources, money, whatever, to kind of get yourself fully kitted out usually. So I kind of recommend if you're going to do it that you do it maybe more than once, but maybe, do it once and see if you like it. And then maybe you'll want to do it again. Um, let me see, in the UK, I'm actually not as familiar with vendors in the UK who make clothing that you could buy. So, Joe, are you interested in making your own stuff or do you want to just do you want to buy? Oh, no, bad, 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 bad. Do you want to buy your kit ready made? Are you in this for the creative aspect, for the just cool wearing clothes aspect, for both? Because there's no wrong answer here. I just like to point out. Most of people who follow my channel like wearing cool clothes and also like making them. But not everyone. Some people just like wearing the cool clothes, and that's fine. Let me see. It also doubles as a clothing rack too, treble machine. Yeah. It's 2 a.m. in the UK, but if I reach out to you again, if that's okay. Yeah, have a wonderful evening. Okay. Bye, Joe. Sorry, you probably haven't heard any of this. Yeah, absolutely do reach out. Thank you so much, Joe. Thank you for being so generous. Sierra Champion says, I have a powered machine and my husband bought a treadle machine for me a few years ago. It has a motor on the back. Original. Yeah. So Sierra, do you still use the machine do you have to use the motor on your treadle machine or is it optional? And do you still use it therefore with the machine or with just the treadle? Yeah, KT, yep, absolutely. free treadle sewing machine, antique German. So real quality. Yeah, pretty amazing, huh? I couldn't believe it when my then fiance brought that home with him from the dump. It's like, oh my God, are you kidding? This is amazing. Sierra Champion, any tips on buying a belt? Make your own belt. So really the belt, it just needs to be a strip of leather that is the right length. So you can actually, if you go to a leather store, like a leather supply store like Tandy Leather, they usually have thong leather bands or leather thongs that are actually thick enough for the purpose of of um, of the belt for the treadle sewing machine, and you can just you just fit it. You wrap it around the two wheels, right? The one on the treadle, the one on the actual treadle panel, and the wheel around the machine itself, right? And then you just tighten it and trim it to length, and then a staple. Like really, you can staple it with a nice heavy duty staple, of course. You staple it shut with the staple kind of connecting the two ends like this. Yeah, that's how we do it. That's how we did it. Because the one on ours was dry rotted, so we had to outfit it with a new one. So really, really, really thick leather thong, like you know, quarter inch, quarter inch, half an inch. Kind of depends. Probably quarter inch is okay. Quarter inch is usually okay. It depends also on the depth of the groove on your treadle and the wheel, but those tend to be kind of standardized, I think. Let's see. That's a great origin story. I need to get my hands on one. I just had an idea that you could use a traffic cone or a boot stretcher to help the miter maintain its shape. Ah, Courtney, that's a brilliant idea. I was trying to think about an object that would be the right shape or size. Yes, a traffic cone. Or, in point of fact, I have a bunch of cones of embroidery floss that might fit very nicely indeed. And they're wrapped in plastic, so it won't matter if there's moisture around them. So, yeah, thank you for that great idea, Courtney. Really appreciate that. Yeah, Nightmare Dragon, exactly. There's no wrong answer, just a different flavor. That is pretty much true of most things I ask on this channel. um, it's mandatory because it has no bed on the treadle. I want it to be treadle only. Yeah, so Sierra, definitely go to your local leather store and see if you can find thong that is like about a quarter an inch, half an inch, somewhere like that. And that should be just perfectly fine. That's all you need, really. I mean, a belt for the treadle machine. Yeah, no, no, I knew what kind of belt you meant. I knew what you meant. I do. I knew what you meant. And I knew because I've had to do that myself. We had to outfit our machine with a new belt as well. So I knew what you meant. It's okay. It's cool. Yeah, go to your local leather supply store because they should be made of leather. I mean, the original ones were, I like natural materials anyway. So, and I've had my treadle, the belt that I have on it has lasted forever. So, yeah. TJ, all there is a G there. I'm not certain if you meant to say something more. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and actually put in some stab stitches here. No, I'm gonna whip stitch it. Yeah, or not. I'm trying to decide. Maybe little whip stitches. Yeah, I'm probably gonna put in little whip stitches. Whip stitches are easy. Whip stitches are really the easiest, fastest, bestest stitch for that. For pretty much any application. Yeah. So we're just gonna go ahead and do that. Whip stitch this little baby back together. Doesn't have to be, I don't want it to be overly strong because I definitely don't want things ripping when they shouldn't. Probably also means I might need to open this up a little bit more, and that's why it was pulling, but whatever. I'm committed now to these whip stitches. There's no way I can remove them. There's no tool that exists that can remove stitches once you've made them. Okay, there we go. Oh my goodness, Nobby is destroying their little box playground. People buy their cats toys and they spend a lot of money on them. Don't get them a box. That's all they need, really. Just a box. A box is fine. Oh, by the way, for those who don't know, this winged coif, it's looking nice and particularly framey, nice and sort of resiliently stiff because I starched it. This is part of my experiments in starching. And I have to say, I'm really loving the effects of starching on everything thus far. Okay, there we go. Oh, hi, Gypsy Rose. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I like natural materials too. My only concern is my 13-month puppy thinking it's yummy. Okay, but Sierra, 13-year-old puppies think everything is yummy, including electrical wires that have electricity running through them. So I don't think I don't think it's gonna matter much what you take. Question: when did the French seams become a thing, and was it commonly used? So it depends on what you mean by a French seam. If you're talking about you're talking about the jean seam, that kind of French seam, um, or are you talking about yeah? So the how to answer this question. So the most common seam in amongst extant medieval garments is a felled seam, right? By which is some kind of felled seam, and a French seam is a kind of felled seam, basically. But those kinds of seams are really most useful for straight lines. And for places where you want really super duper super strength. And for if a seam is going to be really strong, then the fabric has to be really strong. So that's why jeans use a French seam, right? Because the fabric is really strong and it can resist the pulling, right? So I say that because medieval garments weren't necessarily designed to have super strong seams because your average medieval garment wasn't made of fabric that could resist pulling on that. And I know a lot of people, modern people, want to use French seams on their medieval clothes, and then when the fabric tears instead of the seam, they despair. Um, so, I haven't done someone actually did. I saw someone once did a study of like extant garments from the like 12th through 15th centuries and actually calculated the different kinds of seams and the incidence with which the different kinds of seams appeared. Yeah, French seams were not that common. There's a couple of examples of ones that might be French seams, and I say might because sometimes there's not enough left to really determine fully what kind of seam it may have been. Enough of the garment, I should say. But the most common are seams that are either stitched with backstitch or very tight running stitch, and then the fabric is trimmed, the seam allowance is trimmed on one side, and the rest is folded over, and then it's felled over to one side. Is like one of the most common seam finishes. But there's a lot of seams where they don't finish it at all because if you're using medieval wool didn't ravel and there was no need to finish the seam whatsoever. So medieval fabrics in general seem to have been more tightly woven than our modern varieties of fabrics, which is interesting since we use machines to weave now and they didn't. But yeah, so it seems that there was less of a need often for seam finishes than there is with modern fabrics. This starching era, yeah. Will I end up starching my camice? No, I will not starch my camice. That will not feel good. Starched fabrics are great for cutting, but it would not be particularly would not feel particularly good on the skin. And also, the reason I wouldn't starch my camicia, especially not the body part, is because it's going to be hemmed in all around, like it's going to be squished against my body by the fitted overgarment, and so all of that starch is just going to create break lines. And I mean that literally. So, starching has the advantage of protecting your fabrics, your clothing against microbes and against stains. It has the disadvantage of making your fabrics more delicate, and the fibers will more easily break at the fiber level because the starch actually dries the fabric out. So, what that means is you really only want to starch things that are not going to be constantly crushed and uncrushed. So you definitely you do not want to be starching the body of your camicia. Maybe at most you might want to starch the cuffs, maybe starch, but even there on my Italian ones, they're getting squished. by the sleeves. And so that's going to create all these sharp pleats that are probably going to end up disintegrating more quickly than they would have otherwise. So no, starching veils, because the veils just kind of lay there and nothing is squishing them down and they're sort of starched into a shape usually. That's great, but starching something that's going to go under something else and get squished, I wouldn't recommend it. And it would also probably not be particularly comfortable against your skin because the starch will definitely make um like this feels fine because it's not it's nice and smooth, but I don't know, it might be okay. It's no, because the knife pleats, any areas that are sort of knife sharp will kind of possibly be scratchy. Yeah, I don't think I'd wanna I would definitely not wanna starch a whole garment. Now maybe lightly starch it, just enough so that it acts more like sizing and not like stiff starching stiff starching, wow. Stiff starching, then maybe. I'll have to think about that a little more. Might have to experiment with a really weak bath of a rather diluted bath of starch and see what that does with the to the kamicha. Well, that might be another live stream I'll do in the middle of the week. Starching the kamicha, the experiment, and see what happens. Because God knows anything that prevents my whites from getting stained is a good thing in general. Yeah. Yeah, Nightmare Dragon, was that enough of an answer? uh yeah, just the extant garments I've seen, French seams do not seem particularly common. Um and honestly, it's a harder seam to do. It's a much more involved seam. Uh do you have a particular love of French seams? Does anyone have a particular what does everyone here have a favorite seam, by the way? Questions you probably never thought you'd be asked. Kay, so good to see you. Welcome. Welcome. Oops. So the problem, of course, with double thread is that sometimes the two sides of your double thread want to act as independent agents, and that can get a little annoying. That just happened now. But usually you can coax them back into behaving in a more unified fashion. Yeah, Kate's fantastic. Good to see you. Thank you for joining. Are you working on anything today, or are you just coming to hang out? Kay is one of my channel members, everyone. Thank you so much for your support, Kay. I really appreciate that. And some of my patrons are also on board. Laurie, if you're still there, I really appreciate you. And if any of my other patrons are out there, like hanging incognito, just let me know. I do like to thank you personally because I appreciate everyone's support. And I particularly appreciate people who go that step further and actually support me financially. I really do. Your generosity is very much appreciated. And I'm very honored by such faith. No fave seam, serger seam. Yeah, I have a friend who just recently discovered the serger seam, and she's like, everything now is going to be serged. All of my medieval garments. I didn't even know it was possible to serge and finish, or to sew and finish the seam at the same time. Oh, goodness. Serger seam. That's pretty funny. I like people with a sense of humor. Crocheting a blanket for my daughter's puppy. Oh, is this a stuff a breathing puppy or a plush puppy, shall we say? And if it's a breathing puppy, are you not concerned that the puppy will eat the the crochet blanket? Yeah, Gypsea, are you working on anything in particular at the moment? And if you answered that question already, I apologize, I missed it. Okay, let's see what else we've got in terms of little repairs that need to happen on this dress. Okay. Oh, right, this one. Okay, so the part of the gown that we are now moving on towards is, I'm gonna sit up and shift my legs about a little bit. Sorry, everyone. The part we are now moving on to is, this is the back. So you see the turnover collar that hangs down like that. And the joint between the two sides that has freight, like the fabric is the taffeta has given up entirely there. And what's interesting is if you look at the lining is just fine, which gives me the impression that somehow the shell fabric has either shrunk relative to the lining or there was always a discrepancy in size. And so what's happened now is that the shell has just stretched to accommodate this apparently the amount of space I actually need back there, probably because of doing things like this. So, I'm ultimately going to be putting a patch in there because that clearly just needs to be filled in. Like it shouldn't be scrunched back up again. But I don't have my patching fabric for this gown with me. So what I'm going to do for the nonce is I'm going to just tack this down, the shell down, and try to just make those stitches behave a little bit better. And then that'll prepare the ground for the patch. That'll make the patch easier. Yeah. Is it possible that the lightly starched kamecha would become gummy where sweat accumulates? So, Courtney, that is an interesting question, and I have wondered that myself since I'm just now entering the marvelous world of starching. I don't yet have an answer, but I'm hoping to get some answers in the coming months as I increasingly wear these starched things. So, for example, this is right around my face. So I'm hoping to maybe go do some dancing with the condottiero out near the neo-Gothic cathedral here in town and then I'll sweat hopefully, and then I will let you know if this gets a little gummy. And yeah, if I starch end up starching the kamecha, I'll wear it, and I will let you all know if that actually happens. I think I think there isn't enough starch for that to happen. Is my thought, my initial thought that it at best it'll just kind of like rub off onto my skin. But we'll find out. So that is an interesting question. Real life puppy. All my grand fur babies get one, and the blankies held up surprisingly well. Good point, though. Maybe I should switch to patchwork. Yeah. Gypsea says, I'm world building the animals in my role play world. That's pretty cool. I'm writing and drawing out the book of animals. Very cool. Are these fantastical creatures, real creatures, something in between, your own creation? For those who don't know, my condottiero, one of his very passionate pastimes is D&D, and he is a world builder. I keep trying to push him to actually publish his stuff. He's does all his own drawings, he draws his own maps, he makes these elaborate sets. Keep telling him he needs to publish, and he knows he does. It's not that he just sometimes it's hard to overcome the inner pig dog. Der innere Schweinehund ist ja ewig dabei, right? So as they say in German. um, so no, no, I should start this underneath. Yep, I'm gonna start this. I'm gonna anchor this underneath here. Okay, anchor the thread on the lining. And actually, mhm, so you can see because it's worn away, just like with medieval garments that wear away, the best way to get a look in the inside of a garment. This lining silk wasn't actually heavy enough on its own, so I interlined it with this pink linen, actually, that you can see there. So that's what gave it more of a heft to actually give the gown give the lining the body it needed, that I felt it needed anyway. Okay, that is anchored. So I'm going to bring the needle now to the front. Let's see. Another D&D world builder. Yeah. I have to say that there is a pretty sharp crossover between members of the Society for Creative Anachronism and adherents, practitioners of D&D. The Venn diagram there is not a perfect circle, but it's kind of like this. I am myself not a practitioner of Dungeons and Dragons. I do not enjoy tabletop role playing. I enjoy actually I get bored. I prefer to be up and like building the things literally for real instead of building them in my imagination, I guess. I tried it once and yeah, I fell asleep. So not my thing, but I do encourage other people to explore their creativity in that regard. And I especially encourage my condottiero because it does bring him such joy. And it is it is a very creative pastime, especially the way he does it. He actually prefers world building to playing, I'll be honest. Okay, so I'm just going to put in a bunch of little stab stitches here to kind of tack the lining down where it seems to want to, or the lining, no, to tack the shell down to the lining where the shell seems to want to just naturally be. Sometimes the fabric will tell you where it should go rather than where you think it should go. But the inner Schweinehund is prone to inspiration, doggedness, and curiosity, among other traits. uh, I'm afraid that for the most part, the innere Schweinehund just makes you want to sit on your butt and do nothing. Is the ultimate procrastinator. Gypsea says, because there's so much in world building, my ADHD doesn't make it so that I give up on it. Ah, right. I could understand that. Yeah. So there's always something new to keep your attention. Totally, totally get that. By the way, if you haven't yet, please hit that thumbs up if you're enjoying this. So yeah, all these little repairs. So I am planning on making a new gown in the style of the one you see here. I am thinking about completely, not completely changing, but changing the construction of the top part anyway. Thus far, I've always made these gowns so that if they had a turn back collar. Which means that there's actually a lot of really sophisticated tailoring happening around here because there isn't an attached collar. The collar just is an extension of the body of the fabric, and it's designed to turn back and lay flat. It's not as easy as it sounds to make it do that, by the way. The pieces, the way to get that to occur is pretty complex geometrically speaking. Um, but I'm pretty certain that there were definitely that was how it started out, that the gowns, the collar that you see, that turn back collar started off as an integral part. But my suspicion is that as the century wore on and the gowns got more and more fitted, that maybe by the late 1470s, that they were actually properly a separate collar that was attached, which would allow for the really off the shoulder look that you start to see by the end of the 1470s and into the 1480s. And I'm really keen to do one of those sort of off the shoulder style ones, or like almost off the shoulder, like right here at the edge of the shoulder with this kind of more scooped neckline rather than the V neckline. There's the Mary of Burgundy's Book of Hours, her frontispiece with her portrait. I want to make that gown basically, and I don't think it's a turn back collar. I think it's an attached fur collar, but attached collar nevertheless. So I think I might be experimenting with a different cut in the next one. Or I might just remake exactly the same one because I just want to have a new gown done in time. I have some really nice 15th century reproduction silk brocade that I purchased last year from Fabric Guru on one of their super sales, and it's blue and gold, blue ground with the gold pattern, pomegranate pattern, and I'm really excited to have a gown out of that. So I might actually not spend 3 months messing around with repatterning that part of it and just make a new one in this exact same style, and then worry about on the next one futzing around with a new style of collar. That could also happen. So yeah, my condottiero definitely likes DMing. He's been DMing since he was 8, actually. He apparently has always been a control freak and has always preferred being the story weaver rather than the person having the story woven for them. Okay. So kind of, as you can see, I've basically outlined within stab stitches where the fabric just kind of naturally pulled itself to. So I'm going to go back. Ugh, oh, that seam allowance did not end up. mm, Well, I'm gonna trim you. Okay, and I might I think since the plan is ultimately to patch this, I'm not going to bother doing any other kind of treatments there. I was thinking about putting some more stitches to tack it down, but no, especially if I'm going to put a patch in there, I don't need to worry about that. So no, no point in wasting precious time and resources on some place where it doesn't need it. Is the new robe going to be blue or green? The new robe will be blue because it's a blue ground with a gold pattern. So I don't have any green fabric actually, sadly, because nearly all of my fabric is bought through Fabric Guru, which is, for those who don't know what Fabric Guru is, go check out their website. They are a true interior decor um, fabric outlet, a real fabric outlet. And so what that means is when these interior decor fashion houses, interior decor houses like Ethan Allen, etc., um, have remnants, bolt ends, they sell them at a severely discounted price to Fabric Guru because apparently, if you're going to redecorate a mansion, you can't do it for less than 100 yards. And so, any bolts where they only, any fabric where they have 100 yards or less, they sell it to fabric resellers like Fabric Guru. And then Fabric Guru passes those savings on. So instead of $300 to $500 a yard, for silk damask, you get it for $20 a yard, for instance. So, what they have though is therefore very much contingent on what is in fashion in the interior decor world in the season. And if that statement sounds like so many privileged words together, you are right. Because can you imagine having enough money that you can redecorate your entire house every couple of years? And I mean everything, the upholstery, the curtains, the just everything in expensive silk damask, silk velvet, silk taffeta. Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting thought, isn't it? So I can't, but I do like buying discounted designer interior decor fabrics because interior decor fabrics are woven for durability, unlike fashion fabrics, which are not, because they don't expect people to wear clothes for any length of time anymore. But interior design fabrics are still worn for durability because even rich people don't want their curtains wearing thin or their upholstery wearing thin before they get around to the next decorating phase. So, very recommended for reenactment fabrics. Fabricguru.com. No, they are not a channel sponsor. They really should be. I should reach out to them about that because I send them so much business all the time, but I haven't. And actually, channel sponsor. Today's in addition to the generous support from my patrons and my channel members, and I really appreciate you all. We also, my channel also has a wonderful sponsor in the form of Armor and Castings, a Ukrainian reproduction medieval decor. And Tara was trying to call. That's not going to work. And so I just wanted to thank them for supporting me in my work as well, and to show you one of the examples of their work. This is one of the most recent pieces that I have from them. This is my coronet, not my most, one of the most. Actually, I meant to bring out the jewelry box and I forgot. Oh well. So this is a reproduction coronet from a queen, Queen Margaret's coronet, I believe. And yeah, you may have seen this in recent videos over on my Nada Hennin, right? But if I'm gonna do, if I'm really gonna do 15th century queen in her quarters, this is the look, right? Coronet on top of your underwear. Yes, that nothing says queen like that. So yeah, if you're looking for any kind of reproduction, historical jewelry, belt fittings, accessories, pins, go check out Armor and Castings page because they have a massive variety and they're expanding, always expanding into new pieces, new time, new geographies, and new eras. So yeah. Yeah, isn't this exquisite? Look at this. I mean, it is just beautiful. They did, yeah, this thing is gorgeous. It really is. And it's fleur de lis, of course, my sigil. So yeah, they've got all sorts of things. The collar that you've seen me wear, that's Armor and Castings. The pendants on my hoods, that's all Armor and Castings. The belt is not, at least the big wide belt, that's Armor and Castings. The belt I made, but the harness, the metal bits comes from them. Volume is now low. Okay, that could be. I think I know why. Am I back yet? If the volume got low, let me. If the volume got low, it's because my condottiero tried to call me, and unfortunately, the volume gets low. Can It's now okay? Yeah, it was the call. It was the call. Yep, that was it. Condottiero. Navi has Wi-Fi again. Oh, yeah. Condottiero, my volume got low because you tried to call. Okay, let me see if I missed any comments. Let me see. Laurie, did we buy the same fabric? Yep. Yep. Laurie, we definitely we might have very well bought the same fabric or not. We'll see. I guess we'll find out really quickly, huh? Um, do I do full LARP? I back when I was a teenager, I briefly dabbled with Vampire the Masquerade. But it turned out that I didn't care about the game. All I cared about was the role playing part. So that's my favorite form of living history is actually a role playing style where you immerse yourself fully in the time and fully become the medieval version of you and interact in a medieval courtly manner and only talk about medieval things or things that would have been discussed by medieval people and do medieval activities. So in that sense of full LARP, yes. But in the part of the game where you actually have like a character with stats, that doesn't interest me. That's just me. KT says she got 50% off of a bolt of 8 yards of 100% cotton flannel from Joann's this week. Yeah, Joann's is a sad story, isn't that? Venture capitalist for the loss. Mm. Yeah, yeah. Oh well, that is sad. But I'm very happy, KT Rainbow, for your deal. It is always nice to share to hear other people's success stories about getting good bargains on things. This is not a French coronet. Actually, this is a Danish coronet, I believe. Medieval though. But yeah, so the fleur-de-lis is not just a symbol of royalty in France, contrary to popular belief. And France was not the only place that had the giglio, the fleur-de-lis, the lily, as it's called in English, as their sigil. So Florence also had the lily, the giglio, as it's called in Italian, right? So not just France. But yeah, that is this. It's actually a Danish coronet, but it's very. I mean, if you look at the ones that are French that from this era, they there's not a lot of ingenuity about coronets. They all kind of have the same sort of features. The differences tend to be how tall things are, and sometimes the specific sigils, but they're all kind of very similar. Okay, just checking to see. Doing last minute. Oh, Ocean Answer. Fantastic. Welcome back. It's good to see you again. It's been a while, huh? Doing last minute modifications before an SCA event tomorrow. Oh, Ocean Answer, you are speaking my language. Last minute sewing modifications, repairs right before an event. That is a time honored tradition across all reenactment groups. Let's be honest. um, Let me see. I'm going to miss Joanne's. Now it's a 4-hour drive to a physical store with fabric for me. Yeah, right. It's getting kind of desperate. It's I had this thought. I've had this thought a couple of times actually. We're kind of going back to the 19th century, but with modern technology. Because in the 19th century, especially in the parts of America where that were new towns, they didn't have stores that had everything. They had catalogs and they could order from them, and then they would get things in the mail. So it's like we're going back to that. But now instead of, ordering through the mail, we're ordering online. But it's kind of it's like the circle. We're coming back to where we once were. But yeah, for ordering fabric, it can be a little nerve-wracking. I've had some challenges in purchasing online fabric. In fact, do you all remember me telling you the story of the fabric for my new Italian Gamora, this one? Do you all remember me telling you that I bought this wool on eBay for a cloak for my middle child and it was advertised as fire engine red? Does this look like fire engine red to anyone? To anyone? Fire engine red? No. It does not. At least not to me. If it does look like fire engine red to you, no judgment. That's You obviously see things literally differently than I do, and that's cool because the brain is a mysterious place. Um, Let me see. Role playing as my SCA character. Heck, I envision my character being hysterical, shouting in French about how anxious he is about all the Kings Philip about the Kings Philip is doing in Spain and all that King Philip II is doing, all the killings Philip II is doing in Spain and Burgundy. Oh, 16th century. God, the 16th century depresses me. I think some of you heard me say that before. Yeah, 16th century just depresses me so much. Okay, let me see. Kaylee, you're here. Oh, it's so good to see you. I'm doing really well, as well as can be expected, all things considered. Yeah. So yeah, the just kind of working on some repairs together with everyone and talking about each repair as we go. So, being productive is always a good thing. Let me see. With Joanne's going out of business, I'm ready to buy a sheep, a spinning wheel, and a loom. Yeah. Yeah, online fabric shopping, it's not for the faint of heart, that is for certain. Um, yeah, pinky red. Yeah, that's yeah, it's and in not the camera, it's very pink. Very, very, very pink. Haven't done much sewing, what with all the sheep raising. Yeah, that's kind of where it goes usually if one decides one's going to explore the depths of living history authenticity and, make the most authentic whatever it is, then you have to start with the heirloom cultivar of sheep, which needs to be fed on heirloom cultivars of greenery, which, you know, needs to be grown in soil that has the same composition as the medieval soil would have had. And, eventually you're like, well, what with all the medieval farming I'm doing, I haven't had really any time to get any sewing done. Okay, so we've got another underarm gore where it's pulled away, and I did talk about this at the beginning. You can see the fabric is showing me once again where it wants to be versus where I put it. So I'm going to go ahead and put in some more tacking stitches here. And yeah, I'm just tacking it for longevity so that it lasts a little bit longer until I get a patch down here because clearly I think probably the patch is the way to go here. I mean, it's going to need it anyway just because of the wear and tear. And I might end up, I'm probably going to end up redoing the sleeve head on these a little bit, just because it does when I made this garment. If you look back at my video on my sewing mistakes, you'll learn a lot. One of the mistakes I made in patterning this particular dress and fitting the new pattern for this dress, I did not fit it over top of a Curdle. I just fit it over a regular old shirt. And guess what? It is now way too tight in the arm's eye and it pulls off of my shoulders because of that, because Curdle takes up room. And so it's yeah, the arm's eye on this is super tight. So I can probably actually redo that as well and show you how that works. The process of adding fabric to make the sleeve cap and the arm's eye actually sit where they're supposed to over top of the garment over which it's supposed to go. The short the short of that is though that if you are fitting any garment, make sure you're fitting it over top of the garments that should go under it. Which is why I always recommend to people, if you're starting to sew, start from the ground up. Start first. First, make your undergarment, your chemise, your smock, your camisa, whatever your language of choice is, right? And then go to the next layer and then the layer over top of that. This has a couple of benefits. One, it will give you the working on the much less fitted smock will give you the basic skills you need. And then the next layer is more fitted and more complex. You'll build your complexity. And then the top layer is probably going to be the most complex, and you'll have built skills by the time you get there. So that's not only is it practical from a fitting perspective, it's practical from a skills acquisition perspective. That's my recommendation. Don't do what I do what I say, basically. Almost salmon pink, in fact. Yeah, it definitely is. Um, I was debating getting a loom until I saw how long it takes to make silk damask. Yeah, Ocean answered. No, seriously, right? I just shared our goat. Ooh, that just sounds so good. I just sheared our goat. Kaylee says, I'm excited to see if I'm able to dye his wool. It's all sorts of colors. So I do know that in the medieval period, they would bleach the wool before dyeing it. So that's how they managed to that's how they would get those really great colors from wool. They would bleach it first. But also there is a kind of wool called russet from the Middle Ages that is called that because it is a like red brown color that is the natural color of the wool from black sheep. So they also didn't necessarily always, if they weren't going to dye it, then they didn't bleach it. So yeah, guess it. Your little goatee, your goat has multicolored fur? Is it fur? We don't call it goat fleece, do we? Goat fur, goat hair. Goat hair. We call it goat hair. Yeah. So your goat has is does each goat have like multiple colors or one goat? Do you have a goat singular? Is it just a single colored goat or a multicolored goat? Yeah, that was my question. Let me see. Do you know the name of the shiny wool fabric they used to make? Yes, it's called doeskin. That is called doeskin, and you can still get it. It's also it's sold as Melton wool, doeskin or Melton wool. Yeah. So it's usually retails for like 150 pounds a yard because the only place found that sells it is in the UK. And they apparently still use it to make suits, really fine suits, and especially in really specific application, dressage uniforms for competitive showing for side saddle. Side saddle dressage uniforms and jumping uniforms are made from doeskin. So yeah, it's called doeskin. It's amazing. I dream of getting some doeskin myself because I definitely yes, I want to also make the Arnolfini gown. You're talking about the gown in the Arnolfini portrait? Yeah. A Stitch in Time did an episode on making that gown. I yeah. I don't necessarily agree with all of their conclusions and approaches on that gown, on reconstructing it, but they did manage to get some doe skin for it, as I recall, and you can definitely see the sheen that it has in their reproduction. So go ahead and check that out. A Stitch in Time. It used to be on YouTube. It may or may not still be on YouTube, depending on where you are. Stitch in Time did the Arnolfini portrait. They also did a reconstruction of Edward III's his pourpoint, his funerary pourpoint, the one that was suspended above his tomb in Canterbury Cathedral for like 600 years before they finally took it down and conserved it and put it in a museum. They did a reconstruction, and that reconstruction I really recommend watching that one especially because the techniques they share are absolutely essential for people who want to do quilted garments, and who want to do applique embroidery onto things. Yeah, definitely worth watching. A Stitch in Time. Let me see. How would they bleach it? This wool ranges from gray to light to dark brown to black. He's really multicolored. So I'm actually not as familiar. I'm pretty certain they used ammonia for the bleaching process. I think so. I think it was ammonia from fermented urine. But I'm not as familiar with the post dyeing process or the pre dyeing process as I am with the dyeing process. But I'm pretty certain it was ammonia from specifically fermented urine, and the best fermented urine is made from men who've had strong drink, according to the dyer's manuals of the era. And I'm pretty certain strong drink did not mean small beers, in case you're wondering. Um, red wool made with black wool. Very cool. Yeah, right. So the russet, talking about the russet. Yeah. So if you see russet described in medieval sources, that's what they're describing is this wool made from the black wool, black sheep's wool. Lye. Would lye have bleached? That's a good point. Well, lye is a yeah, maybe. Hmm. Maybe lye would have bleached it. I mean, lye will do all kinds of horrible things to your skin. Yeah, maybe lye. That's a good point, Condottiero. Could be lye. I disagreed with Stitch in Time's Arnolfini dress when they made the gathers on the bodice to have a kind of fern pattern. Experimenting with padding has blown my mind. You could easily just pad that. Yeah, so Ocean answer, yeah, there were a couple of things I disagreed with, but um, I don't think the Stitch in Time people had access to the academic paper, Beatrice Snutz's paper on the tailoring revolution of the Schloss Langberg finds, right? Which actually have the way they're patterned, the way they're laid on the fabric and cut, and the way they take advantage of the bias stretch. naturally creates those pleats in front. So I'm pretty certain that they didn't, I know they didn't because I watched them make it. Um, so if you aren't familiar with that paper, academia.edu, Beatrice Nutz's page. I think the title of the paper is a 15th century tailoring revolution. And my patrons have heard this before because we discussed this in our Zoom together, and members as well, because we discussed this in our Zoom, our group Zoom. But yeah, Beatrice Nutz, I'm pretty certain a lost tailoring revolution. Might be called a lost tailoring revolution. And it will blow your mind how they actually created those Germanic, those Germanic portraits where there's those pleats in the front. You're going to see how they do that, how these extant garments from the late Schloss Langberg did it, and you're going to. That's something I really want to play with soon too, because that kind of fun tailoring, that creative sort of magic tailoring, really appeals to my sense of creativity and experimentation. So that's why I've got to get through all this crap so I can start doing that stuff. But yeah, I think that's probably the technique also that would have been applied in the Arnolfini gown, for many reasons. One, the trade ties connecting that part of Austria, to the Italies and then up through Burgundy and France. Absolutely. There's no reason that it would have just been only in this remote part of Austria that they would have been doing this. Just no way. There's no way. So yeah, that's probably how they should have reconstructed that gown, using this really interesting teardrop arm's eye that cut out. You got to go look in the paper. Okay, let's see. My ducks are making a ruckus outside. Yeah, that was my cats inside. They've passed out, thankfully, so hopefully that noise has stopped. Yeah, a lost tailoring revolution, I'm pretty certain. And maybe put in Langberg in your search terms, and that will make sure that gets the right paper. It was kind of gross in Stitch in Time, though, when they went to that lady, touched her own urine, and then touched her face pensively when asked a question. I guess I've been doing living history too long involving bodily fluids to get disgusted by things like that. I'm so jaded in that regard. Okay, let me see what else we've got. So I have prepared that area for the patch. Prepared that area for the patch. The hem has just, so if you want to see the guard on this, so this is the bottom of the gown, the skirts. And over the years, this silk, like I said, the silk wasn't the strongest, which is why I interlined it with the linen, and the silk proves just how not sturdy it is by the way it is just shredded by being dragged all over the place, because my skirts all drag. So yeah, this needs to be patched pretty badly. And actually, what I think I really want to do, instead of bothering patching the silk, is I'm just going to apply. I'm going to finally apply the fur guard on the bottom that should have been there the whole time, really. So I'm going to get around to doing that instead of bothering trying to repair this very, very frayable silk. Because I've already done lots of patches, tons and tons and tons of patches, and even the patches have worn away, as you can see here. So I think the thing I'm going to do to conserve the bottom is I'm just going to finally attach that the fur guard that I've prepared, or started preparing and need to finish preparing, and then attach it. It's only like 10 yards of hem, whatever, no problem. Sable or ermine, neither. Mink. Neither sable nor ermine. I'm ermine, mink, and I guess they're kind of all like related. They're all Weasley, but yeah. I do have an ermine, a vintage ermine cloak, from like an opera cloak from like 1900, and I was going to cut it up to upcycle it, but then I realized I could just repair it and wear it as an opera cloak when I cruise on vintage cruise lines. So unfortunately, the thing I bought to be upcycled into ermine fur lining for something is now just going to be turned back into what it was. Damn me. Yeah. Okay, so I think I'm actually done with the repairs on this gown. Let me check the time, 10:41. Okay, I'm done with the repairs that I was going to do on it in any case. Moving along to the next gown that needs not so much a repair, but an actual finishing. So I'm confident you all are familiar with the idea of finishing a garment just enough to wear it, to the event for which you're making it, and then you promise to yourself that you will absolutely get around to finishing it after the event, right? I'm confident I'm not the only person who's done this. And then, do you actually get around to finishing it after the event? You just keep wearing it in its mostly finished state. Well, I am going to take what I think is the last step on this dress to actually finishing it properly. So this is my 1480s choppa Florentine in style, although they have a similar style that they're wearing in Bologna in this era. Right, so very long, has the full skirts. You've no doubt seen videos of me in this gown. So, Maiden of the Cloth, I bid you farewell. Oh, Pearson, thank you for joining me. Have a lovely evening. Thank you for supporting. And I hope you enjoyed what you got to participate in. Sleep well or have a nice day wherever you are. Oh, wait, I've got some comments or questions here. Uh, do you know if there's an extant proof of any ladies using hidden loops to manage long skirts? No, I have never seen, so she's talking about like on wedding dresses, right? So I have never ever seen visual evidence or extant garment evidence or read textual evidence supporting that. So what they did to control their skirts is they just learned to manage them. So if they needed them to be up, they would kilt them. So they put a belt around their hips, kind of low actually, pull the skirts up through it and until they're just at the ground level or as high as they need them. And then the rest would just kind of pouch alluringly over top of it. Right. And if you've seen me teaching dance in videos, you've seen me with kilted skirts that way. Right. Or they would learn to manage them for dancing. They let them drag. You want your skirts to drag for the most part when dancing because that's the point. It's conspicuous consumption. It's like driving your Ferrari around, having your train just sweep the floor beautifully, right? Or if you were dancing and they needed to be up, then there was a way they did that. Like I actually have a video on how to move gracefully in gowns, I think it's called, something like that. And it actually shows the medieval techniques for managing your skirts. Yeah, there's no evidence of loops. There is some evidence of, there's two images I've seen where the train looks like it was pinned to the end of the train was pinned to the center back or held up by a belt on the center back. So yeah, the loops, they don't, for whatever reason, no. It's a good question. Why didn't they start using loops before that? Because I think for the most part, they wanted their trains to drag on the ground. Whereas, especially with like wedding dresses and whatnot, we don't want that to happen because dances have evolved in a way that trains on the ground is a bad plan. But the dances of this era were designed for trains to drag on ground. Does that make sense? Let me see. I just stabbed myself twice with pins. I had to get two band-aids to save my fabric. Look, if you don't bleed on your project, you are cursing it. The gods demand at least one teeny tiny little blood stain. I'm just saying, you might want to trust me on this. But of course, if it's like gushing blood, then that's too much. They don't demand that. If I don't finish it before the event, it sits on my shelf for months before I look at it again. So I have to finish it before the event. Oh, Kaylee, I don't know if that's better or worse than mostly finishing it and then never really finishing it. I don't know. Which one is worse? Huh. That's pretty rough. Oh boy, got some held for review messages. Nope. Okay. Um, so what we've got going on here is that where it closes in front. Um, there was a couple of things about this that I would never repeat. One, I don't know. I was playing around with the use of gores to widen the skirts, and I since realized that by the 1480s they weren't using gores in noble women's dresses to make them wider. They were just piecing fabric together until it got wide enough. That makes things so much easier, by the way. Gores are a pain in the tuchus. Anyway, so there's a gore in the front to create width, and that's annoying on multiple levels. But I was in a rush to finish this, and so I did not see this. This is the turned back seam, the felled and turned seam. So I actually split these seams and felled them, and I I just decided I didn't need to bother dealing with this because when it's closed, technically it shouldn't show. But that's not exactly true. As you can see, it shows. And that's possibly because the fabric is stretched, whatever. So I need to do something about this. And we're going to do something about it now. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to trim it. And I might need to get the bigger scissors for this, but I'll try with these stupidly sharp scissors. So to do that, I'm actually going to, first and foremost, I am going to, oh, by the way, Condottiero, if you're still there, Kitties of the Palace, I did see there was a comment you said that there are 36 tentative flights on the Space A flight. And in which case that's really good. That's getting better and better for your likelihood of making it back to Korea on the military hop. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and trim away some of this excess on both sides. Right, because here ultimately what I want to do is I want to be able to fold this down like this without it being too fat. And then I'm going to like basically miter this edge. For those of you who are asking about mitering, this is basically a form of oblique mitering of the corner, right? So this is what I want ultimately is for it to just line up there with this line of fabric here, but it's too fat right now. So I need to trim away. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim away some of the folded over, because there's a whole bunch of different folded over hems that have come together here. So I'm going to take away some of the folds. What was I thinking when I finished this? Damn, I finished this to a fairly well. Wow, okay. Okay. Who knows? It's been 2019, I think, is when I made this. So yeah. uh it's been a while. I don't remember what my exact logic was back then. Anyway, we're going to trim away some of the excess that's on the inside here so that there is not as much fat fabric fattening that inseam. So that's what we're going to do. Trim, trim, trim. Basically, I can see that I can trim away quite a bit actually. And when you're trimming away, it's best to trim a little bit at a time because you can always trim more. Having to reattach fabric to give yourself enough is real frustrating. It's possible, but frustrating. I'm too OC to wear it if it's not fully finished. Oh, Kaylee, I understand. I mean, I understand. I sympathize. And I really wish I were OCD like that a lot. And I'm not. Because I think I might improve the quality of my product, my output, and also improve my rate of production if I were, but I'm not. uh, yeah. Okay, so that's good on this side. That definitely has made it less fat, but it's still fat. It's still too fat. So I'm going to now trim some of the other side away so that both sides are a little thinner. I know I'm not fat shaming my seams, but it's just an objective reality. Okay, so let's see now how things are looking. If I try to now fold that under, will it fold more nicely? Well, it's certainly folding more nicely, but you can see it's still pretty thick. It might be okay though. I might just call this good enough. Let good enough be not be let perfect be not the enemy of good enough. Right. So I might call that good. And that will certainly be a much nicer finish than was there before, which is my primary goal. I seem to have here we go. Here are pins. Yay, pins. I just dumped them all out. Oh well. um I'm the new type of skating that rushes a project, doesn't always finish it. Then when the event is over, I forget about the project. Another event comes, I get the project and go, why isn't this done? Yeah, um, ocean, I think that's most of us, actually. I think that's the preponderance of the membership. And not just in the SC, I'm pretty certain that applies to a lot of other reenactment organizations or living history organizations. So yeah, lest we think we are somehow unique in that particular regard. No, pretty certain all of us creatives fall under that heading. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so this is all pinned, looking much better now. A little bit that looks like it's a little bit raw, but I think I'm gonna do whip stitches anyway. So the whip stitches will catch up any little bits of raw thread that are trying to be fussy. I take my pin and just force that to actually be a little more flat. There we go. I'm gonna have a little sip of my tea. Today's tea is a green oolong that I bought in Hiroshima on our cruise last year when we stopped in the port. Pins are period right. Just slide one in when you forgot your button fell off in another. Yeah, after a while, I have an apprentice in waiting, um, who is notorious for not finishing things in time. And I can't tell you how many balls at Penzic where we've sat around her, everyone's sewing her sleeves up, the openings on her sleeves up, or the opening of her gown up because she didn't get the buttons done. Yeah, I don't. And we're back. Don't know why it occasionally does that. I'm not certain if that's an internet thing on my end. I doubt it because Korea has like some of the best internet in the world, or if that's just YouTube deciding we've been long enough that it needs to double check that we're still here. I don't know. Okay, well, as always, first thing I'm going to do is anchor my thread, and I'm actually going to start down here, um, where the the finishing stitches, the whip stitches that I used to finish that seam actually are still a little secure. So I'm going to go ahead and re-secure them now that I've cut that line of stitching and they might be tempted to come undone. Okay, now whip stitches to re-secure that felled seam allowance. So I told you, fellow dear fellow creatives and viewers and otherwise people enjoying this stream, I have told you about buying thread on silk thread, used silk thread on eBay. Just be careful. Sometimes it can be dry rotted if it was stored inappropriately or it's just that old. And then it will fray and tear really easily. So sometimes most of the time, you'll get a really good deal, and sometimes you'll get a bunch of dry rotted thread that's useless. So, caveat emptor. And unfortunately, buying on eBay means you can't really tell. You could hypothetically write the seller and ask them to do a strength test on it, but they may or may not be fully honest. Of course, then you can always leave a negative review. That being said, you still spent the money already. So, caveat emptor and all that. So, thread knotted on itself. No problem. Undone. Great. Okay. So, by the way, pins were used in medieval and Renaissance wardrobes as fasteners way more frequently than modern people can often believe. Pins were an essential part of a wardrobe. For me to get fully dressed in my so-called Franco-Burgundian ensemble, I mean, I've got at least you include all the pins in my veil and the pins holding things here and the pins holding things here. There's probably at least 12 pins on my person, right? So just keep in mind that using pins to secure your garments is absolutely the medieval practice. And that's why, it's when, uh, what was the princess's name? sad Princess Edward III's daughter, Joan. Joan, when Princess Joan went to marry the Infante of Portugal, uh, her trousseau had tens of thousands of pins in it, not all sewing pins, because that's just how essential pins were to the wardrobe and to putting everything, holding, fastening everything, making it stay in place. And the people always ask me, "Well, don't you end up poking yourself and bleeding a lot?" No, actually, I never do. I don't poke myself. Other people poke themselves on my pins, but they don't poke me. So, maybe it's a also a personal security system protecting me from unwanted touches. I don't know. But yeah, it's just you don't. One, you learn to move in your garments so that the pins don't poke you. So it's another question of, the medieval clothes teach us in a certain way how medieval people actually moved, because otherwise we tear them and destroy them. And but also safety pins have made us think that a non-safety pin is dangerous, but it's not necessarily true. Let me see. Uh, that's good to know. I bought silk thread from Amazon and I haven't tested it yet. I mean, if it's new silk thread, it's probably not going to be dry rotted. I'm talking about like the dead stock and the used thread from bequeathments of people passing into the next life, so to say. Yeah. It makes you deadly as well using pins everywhere. It does. The pins were unhinged back in the day. Yeah, they really were, literally and metaphorically. Uh, the Now I feel a lot better about only doing lacing on one side of my Renaissance dress and pinning the other one. Making lace holes by hand is my worst enemy so far. Lilith, have you seen my tutorial on lace holes? I don't. If you haven't, you might want to check it out because it might have some tips that might make it less hellish for you, maybe. Yeah, I do have like a 6-minute tutorial on making medieval lace holes. But Lilith, don't you worry. I have a 16th century Italian, damn it, the word sotana. That is technically, it has the side back lacing, but only one side actually has lace holes and the other side is sewn shut. So don't feel badly. And I made that dress 15 years ago, 12 years ago. Either way, don't feel badly. Really don't. I never finished that dress at all because I made that for an Elizabethan ball, themed ball on Cunard's Queen Elizabeth cruise ship. And I definitely didn't get it done in time, and I got it done enough to wear. And I never went back and finished it because the 16th century really isn't my preferred period, and I haven't since had any immersive 16th century events to attend, so there was no impetus driving me to finish it. And of course, since then I've learned so much more about 16th century tailoring that I feel like everything about it is wrong. That's the problem with delaying projects too for people like me who crave the truth of the construction of garments. That when if I wait too long, then I realize that everything I did is not the way that they actually did it, and now it's just garbage. That's, by the way, that's a judgment I only apply to my own creations. The level of insanity you choose in your own quest for historical garments is completely acceptable and fine, and whatever makes you happy makes me happy. I'm only talking about my own neurosis. Don't actually grab a lady, you might get stuck with a pin. Yep, for certain. Yep. uh would men's garments, a men deterrent, yeah, contain the same amount of pins? Lilith, yes. And for the same reasons, like in the 15th century, in the second half of the 15th century, both men in England, for instance, men started wearing stomachers over their doublets. Just the way women were wearing stomachers over their kirtles to cover the lacing, men started wearing stomachs as they were called, over the lacing of their doublets because it was getting cold. And so those were pinned in. They weren't sewn in or tied in or anything like that. They were pinned in. So yeah, men also needed pins for their garments. Maybe not as many because they didn't have the veil systems that women had, and The headdresses weren't quite as complex. On the other hand, for I'm confident that for some of, say, like the chaperon, the hood thing that's round and has the little squid hood like thing coming out of it and the lyra pipe, right? Those are called chaperones. I'm pretty certain for some of the ones that have the really intricate arrangement where it looks like, wow, how does that stay in place? Those pieces have been pinned to stay in that perfect artistic arrangement. So maybe not as many, but still lots of pins. Uh, Let me see. Men didn't have as many, but still had some in the 1700s in their stockings. Yeah, right. To actually hold the stockings up to their breeches is actually I'm not as familiar with the men's 18th century fashion as I should be in terms of the specific details. So KT Rainbow, were they pinning the stockings to the breeches to hold them up? Is that where the pins in the stockings were getting used? I saw someone put a sleeve on with a corsage pin. I was like, dang, I wish our economy right now was that strong. Right. It was only 1 pin per sleeve. Oh, goodness. Okay, let's see how this oh, yeah, gosh, that is so much nicer. Look at that. Isn't that a much prettier finish than the garbage that was there before? And it's okay if you tell me, "Yeah, it looked like garbage before," because I thought it looked like garbage before too. Yeah, that's so much better. Okay, let's put it together and see how that now meets. Looks when it's actually fastened. Oh, so apparently at some point in probably in traveling, this got really, really bent. This hook, it should not be bent back at that angle. When my condottiero returns, I'll have him take his equipment and hammer it back into place. Okay, so yeah, that looks so much better now. Yeah, the stitches have come a little loose too, which is why it's kind of overreaching that way. I might just have to kind of stretched forward, so I might have to pull it back and just attach some more threads to make this actually sit where it's supposed to, but still, look at that. That looks so much better, doesn't it? Yeah. Phew, every time I put this thing on, it made me crazy. So at least that won't make me crazy anymore. But while we're on the subject of this choppa, I thought I would show you some of the finishing techniques I used that I applied from Osana's uh, the Beata Osana's gown. Specifically, this was the first time I ever did an interior facing around the hem. And this facing has, despite this thing getting dragged everywhere, you can tell the linen facing has really held up well. But it was made with look, I need to fix that. Right, more repairs. It was made with a bias cut bands, and I would never do that again. Straight bands for the win. If you're going to put a facing on a hem, just use the straight grain strips for one. All those bias cut strips so wasteful of fabric. But two, the I've once I started looking more closely at the extant Gamora that we have from the 15th century, it became very clear to me that the hem facing was on the straight grain. The bias is just a pain in the butt. It really is. It did not work as nicely as I thought it would. You could see the kind of weird pleating folding that happened there. The other thing that I did wrong here that I didn't look closely enough at Osana's gown is that this facing should actually come down several millimeters from the hem so that all the drag is being inflicted on this guard and none of the drag is being inflicted on the actual shell fabric. You can see where the dragging has started to wear away some of that shell fabric. That wouldn't have happened if the guard had been properly done. And if you look at the project vlog for this gown, the Making My 15th Century Italian Florentine Gamora, I show you how to do that step by step, basically, and how I did it, and tell you what I learned about the process also. Let me see. I think it was to hold them up. It was a crime documentary I watched, and the body they found in the 1990s was from the 1700s. Interesting. Thomas says we used pins to hold the stockings up in the Caroline reenactment, but that was modern safety pins. But Thomas, were you pinning the stockings to the breeches? Therefore, I guess is my question. That's how they knew it was an old body from the pins in the stockings. It was a documentary on the body farm and why we needed to help identify the age of the body. Body farms are fascinating places. Yeah, age of when it became unalived. It's funny the things we have to say to not violate community standards these days, or the way we have to say them at any rate. This live stream is so great. It's answering many of my questions about clothing maintenance. Oh, thank you, Courtney. I really appreciate that. Thank you for that feedback. It's sometimes hard for me to tell what kind of content will be useful and interesting to people and engaging. So I really do appreciate the feedback. For me, it's like, well, I already know all this stuff. And stupidly, the automatic assumption is, well, if I know it, everyone must know it because I can't, I can't, I can't be that special. And then I realized that maybe that's not true. Maybe some of what to me are just normal, everyday, common knowledge is actually not so common and would actually make other people's lives easier, happier, and better. I'm excited about the Guru Fabric Guru van for the win. And tip for Fabric Guru, sign up for their email list. They really honestly send coupon discounts codes out like every 6 months only to the email list. They don't publish them on their website. And I'm talking 15% off your whole order. So that's when I always wait to buy. Every 6 months I wait. I kind of keep unless I desperately need something. Reenactor really ever desperately needs silk damask. Anyway, I kind of keep a saved for later list, and then when one of those semi-annual sales come along, I jump on it with that code. So sign up for the code. Okay. Oops. Got so excited talking about getting fabric deals that I lost the spot. Let's find it again. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so I actually smartly on this for the and this is the way it is on Osana's as well. The guard is done with a blind stitch because this is going to get dragged on the ground. It is going to see massive wear and tear, and so you want the minimal amount of stitching showing. You want the maximum amount of stitching being buried here inside this guard. Also, I discussed this in my project log on making this gown, one of the many tips I give in that video. Okay, so I'm going to actually, as always, back up a little bit from where the stitches actually break. And, yeah, you can see the knot system worked. So this only unraveled as far as it did because here I put some knots in place and here I put some knots in place. And so the system works. It's nice when I can actually demonstrate that. So I'm just going to back up a little bit beyond the spot where it's actually come unraveled and go ahead and put that in, and I'm going to once again do a blind stitch. This is kind of the wrong direction for me to do. This is definitely the left-handed direction for blind stitching. Oh well. And the thing about a blind stitch is that just a tiny little bit actually shows in the front as well. So it's blind on, it's very blind. It's a super blind stitch. It's blind in the front, it's blind in the back. It's just blind. And I'll show you. See? Very little of it shows. I mean, you could make it show more, but then it's not a blind stitch anymore, or not as blind. Maybe it's then just a one-eyed stitch. Sorry, off camera. Keep it on camera for you guys to see what I am doing. Yeah, I wish YouTube would let this because I really like having the two camera angles, and I could achieve that through using OBS and setting up different cameras, and that's just so much extra work. So I really wish YouTube would do this joint stream thing because basically I'm streaming through two of my channels right now. My Travels with the Contessa channel and my Creative Contessa channel so that you can get the two angles. I wish they would let me do this in not the vertical format, but you can only go live together in vertical format. Yeah, stupid, right? Okay. Da, da, da. Check the comments. Let me see. I don't understand how you would make the guard extend past the hem without it folding over the right side. I'm not sure how to word this. How does the extended part hold in place? Yeah, the extended part is stab stitched all the way through. If Laurie, have you seen the section on making my Gamora that talks about the part where I finish the hem? Because I talk about it there and demonstrate the technique step by step. But basically, let me show you. Okay, so here I'm like, wait, I can show you. I have the hem here. Okay, so here is the hem of the Gamora, and this is the shell fabric. And let's see if the camera will actually focus. Okay, so yes, there we go. Okay, so this couple of millimeters here, that is the guard extending past the shell fabric. So this is the top side, okay? And then I flip it over and you can see the back side. So there are basically the stab stitches that connect the guard on the bottom go all the way through top top layer and guard layer and hold it in place so that those couple of extra millimeters stay beyond the shell fabric. Does that make sense? Let me see. Armor and castings, got that. Okay, great. Yeah, so let me know if that explanation made sense on how to make the guard band, the guard fabric protrude past the shell fabric. If that didn't make sense, I will try another way. But you can actually watch the process of me doing it in the video. Okay, great. Thank you, Laurie. Yeah, okay, fantastic. Yeah, so I demonstrate finishing, doing the proper, what is definitely a 15th century and a 16th century hem finishing technique. I demonstrate that in the video blog on making this pink Gamora. And there is some evidence that they were doing this in the 14th century. Queen Philippa, there's a bill in her expense accounts for re-hemming her gowns. And the way it's phrased, it makes it sound like they're reattaching a whole band, not just like handling a fallen hem, but like reattaching, re-hemming it in the sense of completely redoing this band, which that completely makes sense because this is the part that should wear away. And then you just replace it entirely, hopefully without needing to do very much restorative work to the shell fabric. So that is from the 1340s, I believe. That particular that expense account, maybe the 1350s. Yeah, so there is some evidence that this may have also been a technique. Shoot, that it may have been documentary evidence that it may have been a technique in the 14th century. And the reason that expression that just came out of my face was a eureka moment. So um, there is an extant padded cota in Spain, and I definitely share this with my channel members and with my patrons. And I think I did a little short video on it as well. An extant garment from 1295 ish, and the hem is intact. And I should go look and see if I can check and see what the hem finish on that is. Because if it's a guard, then that's the earliest evidence I have of a guard finish. That would be pretty great. Okay. And that gown belonged to Doña Teresa de something Uveda? Maybe Doña Teresa de Uveda? Don't hold me to that last note. That last name. I don't think it actually she might have had like three last names in good Spanish style, but her name is definitely Teresa. And I forget exactly at which convent her garments were preserved, but her smock, her padded cota, and another layer were actually preserved in really good condition. Spain, Spain has some of the best preserved medieval garments. It's really unfair. It's just unfair. And a lot of them haven't been published. They've been published nowhere. They're in tiny little parochial museums or in tiny little community museums, and sometimes they're not on display, so you don't even know they're there. They're just sitting in an archive in a storage room somewhere. Oh, so frustrating. Okay, well there we go. That is reblinded. Okay. I did see the video, but somehow got confused. Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry about that, Lori. Maybe now you can go back and rewatch it and maybe understand what you're seeing. Thank you for that feedback, though, because I'm glad it's good when to know when something isn't helpful, right? One of the things I like about teaching in general is finding different ways to explain the same concepts so that everyone with all different styles of learning and different kinds of brain chemistry can understand the concept. So appreciate that feedback. Thank you, Lori. Oh, speaking of language being a second language, well, guess what YouTube has rolled out, everyone? For those of you who aren't native English speakers, this might make you crazy. They're doing auto dubbing, where AI is doing the dubbing work. So I'm excited to see what that might do to my videos, turning them into other languages. Yeah. Oh, God. Ah, we live in sad times in many ways. Okay. I mean, just since we're here on this dress, might as well check the hem to see if there's any other places where the stitches have worn away. But really, I mean, let me tell you, these stitches have held up pretty well considering the crap I put my dresses through. And any of you who've been a lady in waiting for me, you know what I'm talking about. By the way, the term lady in waiting is not a medieval term. There's actually a fantastic podcast on medievalist.net on medieval ladies in waiting. A researcher has just published a book, and I need to get this book about the lives of medieval dames d'honneur, medieval female retainers, the women who served the great ladies in the great households. She did a lot of primary source documentary research, and she just had a lot of really fascinating, a lot of fascinating things to say on this podcast. So can recommend. But one of the things is that they are not called ladies in waiting until like the 18th century. In French, in this era, they're called a dame d'honneur, usually a lady of honor. And I think now that I think about the English sources, they generally just call them my ladies. These are my ladies, um, and my servants, or they don't actually generally call them something or refer to them that way. Okay, let's see how long this hem is. I hate the auto dubbing feature. It sounds like the person in the video is crying. Yeah, it's real bad. Well, but they don't want to pay for translators anymore. They don't want to pay for interpreters anymore. So this is where we're at, everyone. Yep. Hence why my career as a translator of European languages is pretty much dead. Okay. Well, this, I think there was a spot I thought I saw seam. Yeah. There was a seam has popped, and that probably popped because someone stepped on my train as I was walking away or walking past them. Happens all the time. Also, another very good reason to make sure that one's seams are weak and not strong. Go ahead and anchor my thread kind of inside here. Okay. Closed captioning is bad enough. More Swedish AI gibberish. Yeah, right. Fantastic. Closed captioning is bad enough. Good luck to the dubbing. I'm also multilingual, and every time I hear the auto dubbing, I'm like, ew. Yeah, no kidding. Unfortunately, you can't share links, beloved. Um, but yeah, that probably is it. If it's recent, then that is probably the book, I'm going to assume. So I'm just going to do some whip stitches here. Let me tell you, the whip stitch is really the stitch par excellence. It can do it all. It really can. You don't, I would say if you could only remember one stitch and just one stitch, the whip stitch is your baby. She can do it all. Really, really the Swiss Army knife of the hand stitching world. I mean, could you imagine trying to effect this repair with a sewing machine? Ugh. Okay. Because there's a lot of fabric right here. Let me see. I need to start calling my partner beloved. That's so cute. Aw. Yeah, I also call him handsome. And in fact, all of my Korean friends really thought, honest to God, his name was handsome. Because, Korean names do translate to things like handsome jade. Uh, okay. Okay. Just a little bit more. Hold that together for the next time someone steps on it as I'm dancing past. Yeah, it's an academic book, beloved, and I'm pretty certain that it's not exactly going to hit the bestseller list, so $110 doesn't surprise me. Academic books, for those who don't know, kind of perforce have to be more expensive for the researcher to actually make back their time. Because they're very niche, they're very esoteric, and they're never going to make it to the top 10 bestseller list. In fact, most history books that make it to the top 10 list just annoy me because they're written in a way that just feels so condescending to me. But that's just me. And that's probably because I'm an amateur academic. And so I don't need to be coddled. But I do understand the value of popular history books, pop history books, as a way to make history appealing to a broader audience. And I have no criticism of that. It's just I can't necessarily tolerate them for myself. Okay. This this little thicket of fabric right here is like all these seams that have joined together, plus all the turn back and the guard that's underneath. Yeah, it feels like armor. I think if someone tried to stab me in this exact spot, they wouldn't get through. Wouldn't happen. I'd be fine. Like my liver would probably be okay or something like that. Okay. Let me bury the needle with the thread and done. So something I wanted to point out, from wearing these clothes, that it's always interesting to find these things out. So you'll notice that these bronze castings, which by the way, they did used to shine gold, and I can make them shine gold again with some baking soda. Anyway, they do discolor the fabric where they touch, and so on. That did not go well at all. Hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting experiment that may have failed. I'll have to pursue that a little further. We'll talk about that in a moment. You can't really see it on this wool because the wool is naturally stain resistant, but on the linen Curdle, the spot where the brass fittings from my hip belt, my demescent belt, rub, it's all brassy, bronzy colored there. Like there's brass stains there. So that is a reality of non-precious metals. The it's not just having gold fittings or silver fittings of a high grade of a high purity isn't necessarily just about, oh, it's conspicuous consumption. It actually means those things are less likely to stain your garments when they come in contact with them, and when you do things like sweat in them, as you will if you're doing what medieval people did, which is move around a lot and do things like dancing. So interesting to note. The most early modern pet name I have for my partner is Honeysuckle. Oh, Honeysuckle's so cute. That's a cute one, I have to admit. Okay. So now I'm going to show you why I made that sound of displeasure. I don't know how I'm just now seeing this, but so moving on to my pink gamora for the final garment in today's lineup. Okay, pink gamora. So this is worn over a kamicha like this. I have a whole project vlog, like 2 hours long, about not only making this, but the final getting dressed process, if you want to see that. Um, and so I've worn it a bunch by now. I've had it for a little over a year, and I put it through its paces the way I do with all my things. And unfortunately, we were walking home from an event back in October, and we walked over some freshly laid asphalt. Things that medieval people probably would have very rarely encountered, especially in 15th century Florence or even Burgundy. So unfortunately, I got some asphalt stains on the hem of this dress, like this one here. And then a really big patch because my skirts got pulled. I was dragging a little rolling bag with our supplies, and my skirts got tangled, actually sucked into the wheels. And then also the rubber from the wheels kind of burnt off on them, which this might be asphalt or burnt wheel. I don't know. I did try using dish soap to get these stains out, and they are much less black than they were. But over here, so I used the soap method and I thought I blotted it. Apparently I didn't. So you'll see that the stain just kind of ran into the rest of the wool instead of, it went from being just in these concentrated spots to kind of being everywhere on the hem. So I guess my next step, and maybe I'll do this as a live stream with a little bucket and everything, is to see if I can convince that to go away by immersing it in water with some soap and gently swishing it and see if the stain will come out of where it has leached into by just kind of being spread around. So, yay. Oh, well. Oh, we've had three held for review comments today. One of them was pretty naughty indeed. I did not unhide any of them, in case you're wondering. Okay. So, what was I going to work on this dress? Ah, yes, that's right. Okay, so after some wear, I've come to the conclusion that actually it needs to be a little more open in the front. So, yeah, it needs to be a little more open. The V needs to go a little bit lower. The other thing I need to do, and maybe this will be next week's project, I actually need to put lacing rings all the way down. Because if you look at the extant gowns, the not the extant gowns, we don't have any fully extant gowns like this. But if you look at the artist artwork that depicts real women in these dresses, what you'll see is that lacing rings or lacing holes go all the way down. And I've never, ever, ever done that on it. I get lazy, but I'm finally going to do it on this one. I really am. And maybe next week will be just attaching lacing rings, will be next week's project. So, but what I've discovered is that there's been some pull here from like trying to pull it over my head or push it down my hips over my camecha and all the kind of bulk that creates. So I'm just going to open it up a little bit more. And then I'm going to finish the bottom actually with a row of buttonhole stitches to give it some extra strength around here. But not too much, but also to just kind of finish that up nicely. So yeah, I think though, oh, I even put little buttonhole stitches on the back to make it stronger. Hmm, maybe I won't then. I thought I remembered this pulled a little bit. Maybe I just need to undo those stitches then. Yeah, I'll give it. Well, yeah, apparently I decided to reinforce it at some point with buttonhole stitches. Hmm. That may or may not have been the thing to do. I might undo it a little bit more anyway, just because. Yeah, I think I'm going to. I'd rather it open a little bit too much than at some point at some point tear and then the fabric tear and not the seam. This brings us back to our too strong seam. Yeah, I bet the held for review comments were from bots. Maybe, maybe not. They were pretty salacious, and pretty naughty. Maybe not bots. Sorry for the asphalt and rubber wheel stains. Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, that's true. My condottiero might be joining me for future for a future session. You'll get to see him crafting and creating alongside me, perhaps. I know many of you enjoy seeing us do things together, and I've tried to convince him that you would enjoy that as well. And he thinks no one wants to see him, but he's real handsome, so I think you all do want to see him actually. Google says to remove asphalt from garments, use lamp oil outside. Lamp oil. Well, that sounds like dry cleaning, actually, now that you say that. Are any of you familiar with the origin story of modern dry cleaning? It's real funny. Um, it was an accident, and the person who basically kind of then thereafter invented it and made his fortune off of dry cleaning. Um, God, what was the chemical? It was it was what is the main chemical in dry cleaning? Darn it. Completely flew out of my head. Something you would never expect to actually do what it does. Anyway, he had a jar of it on his lace tablecloth in his dining room and it tipped over and spilled. And they thought, oh, well, it's ruined. When they came back after it had dried to get rid of it, not only were any stains, not only was the stain itself from the liquid gone, but the stains that had been on it were also gone. So, yeah, completely accidental discovery. God. Does anyone know the original 19th century dry cleaning liquid? Something completely unexpected. At least it was to me. Um, yeah. So it's funny how these things sometimes work that really they don't. So like lamp oil shouldn't help with stains, right? It should make more stains, but depending on what lamp oil is made of, it might actually perchloroethylene, which is has thank you, Courtney, but it has a there's a more common name for perchloroethylene, which is what's the common name for it? The thing everyone calls it. Well, anyway. Um, yeah, I'm just gonna open this up just a little bit more, just give myself a little more room. Plus there'll be more beautiful lacing rings going down the front, you know, like this kind of lacing ring, but it will go all the way down the front. So it'll be decorative too. It won't be in vain, the opening. Yeah, so now that I've opened it, let me see if you can so you see can you see that there's like this little like n- triangle, this really shallow point now, this point here? That wasn't there before. That is from pulling, this force of pulling when I pull it down over my shoulders or push it down off over my hips, showing that it was too tight because it was pulling there pretty significantly. So, yeah, that's a good another good reason to another good reason to open this a little bit wider. We don't want to tempt fate in that regard. Oh, by the way, if you don't have snips, get yourself a pair of snips. They are fantastic. Much more controllable than a seam ripper is. No, it's not alcohol. It's something KT Rainbow, it's not alcohol, but it's a solvent, and it's like alcohol, but not alcohol. Oh, god, that did get me one step closer to it, though. Oh, not alcohol, but, darn it, like kerosene. Was it kerosene? Could that be it? Google PCE. Darn it. No. It was a common thing, like, it was a really common thing. I think it might have been lamp oil actually, now that you say that, Susan, but I think it was kerosene, which is lamp oil, right? Like lamp oil in the end of the 19th century, they were using kerosene for it, weren't they? No, it was something that I don't want to uh go look it up myself. It's none of those things. I think it might be kerosene or something like kerosene. Mm, anyway, yeah. So it wouldn't surprise me if lamp oil might actually get asphalt stains out. The question is, will it will remove the asphalt stain, but then will it leave a lamp oil stain? That's the question. So I'm now just going to actually do a very basic sort of bar here, which is basically just a series of whip stitches in in place. I don't want to make this too strong because I want the fabric, I want the seam to rip, not the fabric. And I'm just going to go ahead and because I've now undone the stitches, the back stitches that were actually holding the seam together, I'm just going to go down a couple to reinforce that seam now that the stitches have been cut. Even though I definitely knotted or backed up my stitching every like 10 stitches or so, still, why tempt fate when I can use the handy dandy Swiss knife of the hand stitching world, the whip stitch. So is anyone going to Penzic this year? I have decided I am going for certain, and I will be holding Creative Contessa events and gatherings there. So stay tuned for schedules and announcements of those. One of them will be my famous red and gold ball, and another will be my enchanted picnic. And I'm definitely going to host like a more casual probably Creative Contessa reception. More details to come. Okay, I think that's good enough. Okay. We think it's kerosene over Israel. Yeah, I think so. Kerosene, maybe. Time to watch the documentary of dry cleaning. Watch out for fireplaces. Yeah, no kidding. Another, crazy 19th century invention was, of course, celluloid, which they started making fabric out of. And there's theories that the reason there was a sudden explosion of spontaneous combustion in the industrial era, especially after the invention of celluloid fabric, is because celluloid fabric is so flammable, the tiniest, most invisible spark will set the entire thing alight at ridiculously hot temperatures. So, yeah, one of the first synthetic fibers, super flammable. People say, why don't you like wearing polyester? Well, aside from not liking the way it feels and not liking that I can't breathe, I don't like the idea of becoming a human torch. It's just not my favorite thing. Okay, that done. And just remove these stitches. Yeah, so I think next week's live stream will be involve me probably attaching lacing rings. And I am probably going to be doing a couple, at least one more, maybe a couple more, depending on how my sleep schedule is going, of live streams this week that'll be a little more ad hoc based on my energy levels and what I'm doing in the moment. So make sure if you want to be notified, actually notified, you have to click on the notification bell and you then have to select the kind of notifications you want. Because if you just click on the notification bell, it will only alert you to things I'm doing that it thinks you want to do. And let me tell you, the algorithm does not know us as well as it thinks it does. Let me see. Um, I hope I can. I would love to go to your picnic and just go, humph. I think I saw a portrait of my grandmother wearing those clothes. Yes. Ocean, bravo. You have totally grasped the idea of multi-period immersion. Fantastic. Um, Microplastics in your body. Yeah, Nevis, absolutely. Absolutely. The prevalence of microplastics in our environment is already horrific enough. The prevalence of them in our body is already high enough without directly exposing them to into our system by rubbing them all over our skin and inhaling them and all of that good stuff. So yeah, 100% agree with you there. Penzik is a big 2-week medieval fair festival, medievalist fair in Western Pennsylvania last weekend of July to the 2 weeks thereafter. So usually the last week of July, first week of August. And it's like a 10,000 person event, although it's probably going to be way smaller this year. No foreigners are coming. Yeah, all of my Canadian friends, my European friends, they've all said, Australian friends have said, nope, not going, not this year. Don't blame them. Wouldn't want to either. Anyway, it's a big SCA function. Look it up. PENNSIC. If yeah, there we go. Ryan wrote it. Yeah. And it's got everything, right? It's got medieval combat, it's got SCA style combat, it's got a university with hundreds of classes a day on every kind of medieval living history topic you can imagine, covering the entire globe and 1,000 years of history, hours of dance instruction, live balls every evening with or music balls every evening with live music, all kinds of crazy, not even vaguely medieval parties down in one particular area of the event. It's a place where you can go as immersive as you want or as not immersive as you want. Yeah, Nevis, absolutely. Penzik is absolutely the single largest, medieval-ish event that there is. Or reenactment-ish event there is, full stop, in any period of history. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, I think for any period of history, I don't think any other period of history has something that's 10 to 12,000 people for 2 weeks. I don't think anyway. I can't think of any offhand. And Burning Man definitely is not a reenactment event. Oh, KT Rainbow, you'll be there? Fantastic. Well, stay tuned for details about where I'll be camping and the scheduled things. And I do like people to just drop by and say hello even if it's not on schedule. And I'll be teaching a ton of dance classes, so you can check the Penzic dance schedule, European dance schedule for my classes there. Yeah. Ryan, are you switching back and forth? Oh, Katie. Katie, are you on the Kitties of the Palace channel? Hi, Katie. Good to see you. All these humans using my kitties as a conduit for communicating with me on live streams. Yeah, for those who don't know, I have a channel with my kitties of the palace, and I have a travel channel, Travels with the Creative Contessa, if you want to watch my travel adventures. Yeah, and then of course there's this one. So you can catch me in all kinds of ways. Hope to finish my fancy box excuse me. Hope to finish my fancy box to house my keyboards to look like a Renaissance organ. Nice. I have software that lets me play in mean tone, which was how keyboards were tuned in the Renaissance. Wow, that's pretty cool. Are they battery operated? Just because, there isn't kind of power is kind of limited where you can actually hook up to power on site. But that's a pretty cool idea. That's a neat medieval cover-up idea. I love that. Effectively, no chance of me attending Penzic this year. Finances will be tightish up until the late summer, autumn. Oh man, Nevis, I really do hope you get to attend someday. Have we met in person, by the way? Nevis specifically? Oh, look. There's a burr. I walked through a field and there were burrs, and I spent an hour picking burrs out of the skirt. There was still one I missed, apparently. Uh, okay. Well, oh, I didn't realize how late it was. Okay, well, I am actually meeting a friend here at noon. We are going to go for lunch and go take a walk in a different part of Daegu for me. And in fact, I think I finished up everything I wanted to do today, which is pretty cool. Okay, well, I'm going to give everyone a chance for any last questions, and another plea for thumbs up if you haven't already done that. And I'd like to thank my patrons and my channel members and the generous people who've just contributed with super thanks today. I really appreciate you all, and I appreciate all of you who support me in other ways as well, leaving comments, leaving emojis, liking, sharing my stuff. Really, you guys, you're my community. I love doing this with you and sharing everything that I know with you whenever I can. So I'm looking forward to our next live stream. And there will probably be something in the middle of the week, as I was saying. Could be about more ironing, starching, starched skirts and whatnot, or it might be something different. It might be reforming my knot a hennin. And then on Saturday, for certain, we'll be doing the attaching the lacing rings. Also, my phone's about to die anyway. We always do this until things basically give way. Uh, I appreciate you all, and I will see you hopefully in a stream soon. And remember, after the video post, if you can just leave a comment or an emoji under the video itself, algorithm engagement, blah, blah, blah. You all know the game. Okay, everyone, have a fantastic weekend. And if you're doing any fun medieval stuff, may your medievaling be super fun and creative. Bye, everyone. Read my comment. Which comment? Kitties of the Palace. Dad proposed! Oh my gosh, my father-in-law finally proposed. I'm so happy for him. I know that sounds weird. Uh, Yay, go dad! Haha. My father-in-law's been widowed for 4 years now, which is crazy to believe, and he has proposed to the next love of his life. Oh, I'm so excited. Wedding time. Yay! Thank you, Katie. Fantastic.